Hello, Heiner. Oh, he doesn't have his ears on yet. Hello, Sam. Heiner, I don't think has his audio operating yet.
Heiner is still muted.
Yeah, well, it also says he's connecting to audio, which means that the audio channel, as far as Zoom is concerned, hasn't connected.
Right.
Hi, Stacy.
Hey, Stacy.
She's probably not hearing us yet either because she's still connecting to audio. Takes about 20 seconds for all the communication channels, audio, video, to mechanically.
Also depends on your machine, right? Are you using a relatively aged machine, Barry?
I am using a 2006 Mac Pro running Mac OS El Capitan 11.6. I do have newer hardware, but I prefer the Macintosh for a variety of reasons that I need not elucidate.
Can someone help Heiner get right side up?
I think he's still getting his audio connected, so he can't hear us until his audio is properly.
I suspect he can hear us. It doesn't say audio connecting. It just says he's muted.
No, mine
Heiner.
says it's connecting to his audio.
Right, and it looks like he's attending to the mechanics of his machine because there's no evidence that he's reacting to our mentioning his name.
So wait a minute, Sam, you don't see what Barry and I see, which is on the bottom of his screen. It says that he's connecting to audio with dots.
No, I do not see that.
Why? How is, like, why? Explain that to me, techie people.
Not unless I were responsible for Zoom software.
Here comes Glenn. You gonna let him in or shall I?
I got him.
He's still connecting to audio, so we'll wait until now. Hi, Glenn. Can you hear us now? Yeah.
Yes, it doesn't take that long.
No, but Heiner's taking a long time to get connected to audio. He must be having some kind of network glitch.
Well, sometimes Heiner attends more than one session at a time.
He does. He's got 3 devices. He's got a desktop, a laptop, and an iPhone, and sometimes he has all 3 of them running.
I mean, he's got 2 sides of his brain too.
Yeah, he runs a lot of stuff in parallel, concurrently. He also communicates in concurrent channels. I will have the same conversation with Heiner concurrently in email, in Zoom, and in Facebook Messenger, and in LinkedIn. The same conversation will concurrently be running in 4 different communication systems. Which is really confusing because I don't know which channel to answer in.
Okay,
And he'll vanish from one channel. Sorry, Stacy, go ahead.
getting back to what I was saying, to me, that's a big issue. I want to know why all of us don't see the same thing. That bothers me.
Yeah. Not to mention which there's also different versions of software. So if we're all running different versions, potentially they all send different messages as well.
It could very well be. And also the YouTube recordings do not show the same screen that we see live. For one thing, it doesn't show, I don't think it shows the subtitles, does it? I mean, the names. And if people have their camera off, here I see that I get a window with their name, but on the recording, I don't see anything. I don't see any evidence of their present.
I would think that depends on the person who did the recording and how they have it set up.
Right.
Probably.
I thought that you did see the names on these recordings because that's the way I set it up on my screen.
When
and
I
there's
put
also different versions of video that you can actually download. You can actually download something that says speakers always, in view versus the grid format that by default most of us use.
Even if it's not recorded that way?
Recording happens on everybody's separate channel. It assembles it differently as post-processing. So it assembles one that's just speaker only, then assembles another one that's just the, Brady Bunch view.
But what I'm saying is, let's say you're hosting a meeting and you agree with all the people, only the speaker is going to be on view. and you record it that way, that only the speaker is going to be on view, can somebody watching it change the view to see the other people?
No, it depends on how the video was actually constructed
That's what I thought. Okay.
and broadcast or shared.
I've watched the YouTube play where somebody will say, oh, so-and-so just disconnected. And I said, I didn't even know they were there because there was no evidence on the video that they were even present. And then somebody says, oh, this person that we're having a conversation with and referring to is gone. And I go, I never even knew they were there.
Well, that happens when they're not on camera.
Exactly. If they're not on camera and you're looking at it on YouTube, you don't know that they're even in the session.
You
Yeah, that's
can
right.
show the avatar of a person even if their camera is not on, or you could just have them completely disappear and not even show their default avatar. So
Yeah,
that's a setting.
If their camera is off and they quote leave quietly, the person watching YouTube has no clue that they were there at all or that they left unless somebody mentions it.
If the constructed video excludes those who are off camera.
Yours do. At least they did the ones I've recently been watching in, within last few weeks.
All right. Shall we jump into it or shall we check in first?
We lost Heiner.
Yeah, Heiner dropped off.
Maybe he'll come back on a different device. Yeah, let's check in.
Would anyone like to check in?
Oh.
Just disappeared.
Who just,
Heiner's
check.
back.
Okay,
well,
Heiner's back.
says there's 5 participants.
Well, because
But
Heiner just came back.
Well, Heiner
Right.
came, okay. And Colin dropped off of connection. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Heiner, can you hear us now? No?
Heiner?
Heiner, can
Heiner's
you hear
Heiner?
us?
I'm gonna put a chat in.
Yes, please.
Can you hear
Can
us?
you hear us?
Yep.
Okay, all right. Anyone care to check in or shall we just dive into the topic at hand?
What is the topic at hand?
Proposal,
Oh, really? Okay, all right. I thought
proposal.
people have been looking forward to this for 2 weeks.
Yeah. Sam had requested specific proposals going forward to resolve the issues that we've been wrestling with, not just for the past 2 weeks, actually ever since I've been here
Actually, not all issues. I'd love to do that eventually, but not all issues.
Yeah,
One issue in
Well-
particular.
I only know of one issue, so all issues is really one issue for me.
Okay, what is your version of what the issue is?
The inability to have a conversation which everybody is able to participate on an equal basis without being interrupted or otherwise, what's the word I'm looking for? Blocked from being a participating member of a conversation that everybody is interested in attending to at the same time.
Okay, for me, that's actually not the topic, although it's an extension of the topic.
Yeah, I tend to zoom out a little bit from most people.
Okay, who else remembers? Actually, Stacy, do you recall it now?
Well, I want to hear, I mean, I sort of recall it sort of like Barry has it, but not exact. I mean, how do we deal with these issues when they come up? That's the best I remember
Okay,
at this
what does
moment.
these
Seriously?
issues refer to?
The issue where it's the same stumbling block and people trying to, not trying to. I don't know, are we talking about when people explode or are we just talking about when a conversation is halted because of something that may or may not be important in order to go further?
I'm curious how people recall this, because I thought I was very specific.
Yeah,
It's been a
I
while.
thought it was very specific. It's just recommended practices for these goals. Behaviors, practices, agreements that are recommended for these goals to make them as good as possible. That's the
Yeah.
topic, as I remember it, which obviously includes the mitigation of those kinds of issues.
Super quality conversations, I think is your term for it.
Yeah,
That's your
yeah.
ideal.
That
that's
would
your
be
i-
the big one up there. Yeah. Maybe
Man,
aiming for.
this is a game of telephone in play. Okay. All right. So let me give you my version of what I recall asking for. Okay. What I was asking for, and I would love, by the way, if everything you guys were saying were the topic, but for me, it was much, much, much more focused and laser-like in attention. It was, how do we not blow up in conversation? How do we actually deal with it if that actually happens? I think that is a very, very, very specific case. Now, clearly what you guys are talking about is much more inclusive and would be much more productive if we were able to get there. But I think, dealing with this one specific issue about how we deal with blow-ups and how we not blow up is a step on the path towards that. That's how I see it. That's what I was asking for. Because, we could be talking about all kinds of other guidance, how we do agendas, how we take notes, how we listen, how we lean in. No, that's all great. That's all, stuff that we've been talking about for 3.5 years. What I'm talking about is that very, very specific, when somebody goes to 14, or how do we prevent someone from going to 14? Or if they go to 14, what do we do about it? That was the specific request that I had. Yes, Stacy.
Okay. So my very quick recommendation would be, if you think you're about to blow up, turn off your camera and your video your video and your microphone for a minute. Don't leave the call because that's running away. Don't move forward because that's aggressive, but just put that up. It's a signal to other people, but it's also time for you to recompose yourself and then come back.
Okay, thanks. We have a very first suggestion / proposal.
But I'm pretty sure that the topic as you defined it was that we propose some specific practices
Exactly.
for these
Exactly.
calls.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because last week that was kind of the topic as well, but we sort of more went into.
Well, my request at the end of last week was, let's not rehash the incident. Let's focus strictly on recommendations and proposals.
Recommendations,
today.
yeah.
That was for today, okay? All right, is that okay with everyone?
Definitely.
Okay, does anybody feel they need to rehash the incident? 1, 2, 3, good. All right. All right, so we have one proposal. How would we like to capture that? Let's make sure we write this stuff down. Stacy, actually, could we ask the originator of the proposal to write it into the chat? Is that acceptable, or would you like to designate someone else to do it?
I will do it. We can ask. We can ask.
We can ask.
We can ask.
Is there a we? No, I can ask.
I believe you have. I will accept.
I have asked. Yes.
Yes, you have.
Okay, who's that? Ah, Ms. Kayla. There we go. Okay. Now,
Sorry, you want me to just put it as a proposal, like proposal : and then what I said?
yes. So here's a conduct question. Would we like to discuss them as they come up, or should we go around the room first and collect at least one round of proposals and then have some discussion? I am unattached to either way. Okay, then who else has a proposal? I'm going to actually raise my own hand here. Okay, Glenn, you go.
Yeah, I mentioned this last time, but I'll just say the most important thing that, as I see it for this particular group, is to avoid making assumptions about what other people think and instead ask questions. And not rhetorical questions, but real questions that seek understanding and maybe several questions. I think that practice will help enormously to avoid those situations from occurring at all. and also obviously figuring out what's happened if they occur. Yeah. But to question and to listen with interest and try to understand what is actually happening with the other person instead of making assumptions. So to just remove the assumptions completely, replace them with questions.
Okay, excellent. Would you like to write that down, please?
Sure.
Okay. Kayla, I'm not sure I understood your text. I like the idea of going around the room. That was pretty fast. Was I pretty fast in deciding one way or the other, Kayla? Is that the one?
Yeah. I did like the idea of going around the
I
room.
counted to 3, I thought.
That was a short 3 seconds.
I haven't had my caffeine yet even. Maybe I should go get some coffee and really spruce things up. Okay, so we have 2 proposals. Wow, we're off to a great start. Anybody else with specific guidance? Barry?
Yeah, if 2 people out of, let's say, 7 or 8 are having a protracted conversation on a topic that those 2 are interested in and the others are tuning out, I propose opening a breakout room for everybody else who isn't interested in that little colloquy to go to a separate breakout room where they can converse about something of mutual interest instead of waiting for 20 or 30 minutes for a chance to resume.
Okay, thanks. I've seen you write this up elsewhere. I believe it was in Zulip, but would you actually take the time to write it down in this particular transcript?
Sure.
Would that be okay?
Might I suggest, Barry, that you want to put in like a number of ping pongs that it would take before we decide that's one of these situations?
I think anybody who feels that it's time can just go ahead and move to a breakout room and alert the others who apparently are not attending to join them.
Right, but what happens if it's not the people engaged in the ping pong that feel it's time?
They stay in the lobby and have their ping pong.
No, but my point is,
Okay, now we're ping-ponging.
correct.
So
So
how
that's
many was
why-
that? How many was that?
I don't know. I would say after 2, I would say three each, but with a maximum 4 minutes. I
Okay,
don't
by
know.
the way,
Okay.
the fact that we're having these proposals doesn't mean that we're adopting these proposals. We're only presenting them on the table at the moment.
Oh, so
Okay,
that,
we agree?
so I'm taking that as for you to be cluing me in that I can have this discussion at the next step when we're looking at the proposals.
Yes, I'm
that
trying to go
accurate?
around the room as we were trying to do
Okay.
and collect these ideas first before we
Got it.
actually discussed it. Because I see Glenn reacting, I'm reacting, so let's collect these ideas first, okay?
Okay.
We've got actually 2. I think Barry is still typing. Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Who has another one? Actually, Kayla's hand was up, and then mine, and then Alex. Okay. Ms. Kayla. Kayla, are you there?
Hello? Oops.
Okay, now we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Sorry. My internet froze a little bit. I propose keeping the talking to a minimum. Think before you talk and try and get out what you want to say in the least amount of words. Just because I've noticed these past couple of sessions, there have been quite a few people who are rambling. So that's why I think the idea of going around the room helps. And I personally felt like I've wanted to contribute, but somebody's gone on and on and on, and I can't. So it's my proposal.
Okay. Excellent. Kayla, would you be willing to write that down?
Somebody
Sure.
already did.
Oh, thanks, Glenn.
Yeah, I totally support that.
Feel free to add to it if you think it doesn't adequately capture your thoughts. Okay. Okay, I'll go. Mine is more general. Mine is, okay, sorry, those are fighting words. Let me take that back. Okay. I suggest coming to these conversations with a sense that we are here trying to exemplify the best behavior, conversation skills, collaboration skills that we can possibly create and co-create. If we can come here with that perspective and then consider what we're about to say and say, is this the best me possible at this current moment? And always have that as a filter slash perspective slash, one of your angels on your shoulder. And say, is this the best Sam that could be possibly, presenting this thought at this moment? That's my first proposal, is to have that perspective guiding us, not to be reactive, not to be, triggered, not to be, rambling, but just, is this the best contribution I can make at the moment? Over. Alex, you're on.
Yes, the best contribution I can make at the moment is not to engage in one of those things you listed. So I was focusing on regeneration, urban regeneration, which is, I see it happening quite a lot out in the community. So online community regeneration. This word regeneration has been coming up for me, and I wanted to get deeper into that to find out where I can apply my skills. Over.
You're muted, Sam.
Sorry. Thanks, Alex. I was just checking to see if you're willing to write that into the transcript. I just wrote mine as well. Okay, we're yet waiting to hear from Colin and Heiner and Joshua, if they are willing to contribute a thought here and there.
Joshua's here?
Yes. Okay. Going once, going twice, going 3 times. I hear no response from any of the 3. Okay, so okay, Josh, you appeared. Would you like to contribute a thought or recommendation?
You're going pretty fast for me. A second ago, I was just listening to what Kayla's saying, and then now you're going pretty fast. Contribute a thought of, like, what exactly you're looking for?
Did you see or view, or were you in attendance when Barry went to level 14 a couple weeks ago? And
Yes, I've been on the call for the last 20 minutes. I think I got here at 8:05. So I'm just trying to understand.
I'm talking about 2 weeks ago, Josh. I'm talking about 2 weeks ago.
Yes, correct. I was there also at that moment too.
Okay, so my request at the end of that session was, can we propose some guidelines or proposals or, how-tos, and come with 1 or 2 very specific ones that would either, number 1, eliminate those instances, or number 2, suggest how we might handle those when they do happen.
Yeah, I'm going to just go with exactly what I heard Stacy say, which is just if you're feeling like you're about to blow up, please, we ask that you turn the camera off. Do not leave the meeting, and turn your audio off if you need to, and then come back and when you have time explain, or just not blow up at someone on video and on audio. Just don't yell in someone's ear during the meeting.
Okay.
And you can leave if you want to. I would just change that on her. She said, please don't leave, but if you need to leave to compose yourself, that's understandable too. I don't think that you should get penalized for leaving. But I don't really understand why we're writing down all these things, because then we're just going to break them again. And then we're just going to go right back to, okay, well, let's write them down again. We've also done this quite a few times, this little experiment.
Is that a criticism, Joshua?
No, it's not a criticism. I'm just asking, can we read back the ones that I did before the last time you asked this question?
Joshua, we have at least 80 that we have talked about and written down. So
okay, well, now we got 82. So
no.
Awesome.
Look, to me, okay, I'm going to be a little bit triggered now.
If it was a criticism, I would criticize. Hey, if you're criticized, if you're getting triggered and you're going to go to a level 14, just turn off your camera and walk away for a second.
I'm not going to go to level 14. I don't need to go to level 14. I'm just saying that criticism is, to me.
I said it wasn't a criticism, Sam. You asked if it was a criticism, and I said it's not a criticism.
You interrupted me yet again, Joshua.
You asked me to get on camera and talk to you.
Okay, so now we're ping-ponging also.
I talked to you, and then you said, "Is it a criticism?" I said, "No, Sam. It's not a
It is
criticism.
when it says, hey, we've done this before, or we've got 80 of these.
That's not a
now we got 80.
criticism, Sam. That's a
It's
fact.
been noted that it's not a criticism from Josh's
It's not
point of view. So I would
criticism.
love to hear what Sam has to
I
say.
love that you're doing it, Sam. That's what I'm trying to tell you. You're not listening
No,
to
it
me.
doesn't come across as love, Joshua. It does not come across as
Why
love.
would I get on the call? Why would I even turn on my camera if I didn't want to add to 82 or 83 or do more? Let's continue
Because
to
you
do
didn't
more.
even know what you were doing when you turned on your camera, Joshua.
Oh, I knew exactly what I was doing, Sam. Is you called my name
Okay,
and said, "Are you
So
there?"
here's an
And you were in
example.
my
So here's an
pocket.
example.
You were in my pocket and I was going outside because I just got a coffee so I could get on this call. And you started calling my name and you said, okay, going once, going twice, going. And I was like, oh shit, I got to turn this on because then I won't be able to participate because then I won't even be on the record and I won't even be part of this. That's what
Hey,
happened.
Barry. Hey, Barry, can we go up to another room and continue?
That's what I was just typing.
Wait a second. Hold on, Stacy. Watch.
Okay. All right. So we've heard from Josh, and I had a trigger. And I did have a moment here. Let me explain why I had that trigger, and this will possibly derail the conversation. So how do we want to deal with this? Okay. I heard a comment that, hey, we've done this before. So when we have these comments of, hey, we've done these before, and we've written it down before, and we've got lots of these before. So what is that really saying? Is that saying, wow, this is great, let's just do it again? Or is that saying, this is a waste of time because we've done this before? To me, it sounded more like the latter rather than the former. So that's why it sounded to me like a criticism. Now, if I'm making assumptions, call me on that, okay? And I will actually then reflect on that. But that is a comment that I hear a lot. This, hey, we've done this before comment, which to me doesn't recognize what we're doing at the present. It only says, oh, geez, there's nothing new here. I'm not going to actually be, hearing anything new because we've done this before. That's the perspective that comes across to me when I hear that comment. Okay, I'll stand down now. Okay, so either you can react to me or we can go around the table yet again.
Did
get
any
more
of you
proposals.
pick up a suggestion from Joshua, a specific suggestion?
Joshua was echoing Stacy's, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. He echoed that. But regarding this point, I didn't hear a specific suggestion for what to do instead of going 82 times, or perhaps go 82 times. And just noting that I didn't hear a specific suggestion for what to actively
Okay,
do.
so we have 3 hands up. Alex's hands is up, then Colin, then Josh, and Barry somewhere in there. Sorry.
I thought that at the start of the meeting, if one of the people present was designated to keep an eye on that list of topics that have already been well and truly covered, they can bring that up if somebody mentions one of those again and say, well, can you, if you want to talk about that, you can, but before you do, please go and look in the Google Doc to see what we discussed on that matter, because it's in there somewhere. We have a list of these things we've discussed, I guess, in chapters and indexed. So that's a resource that's there. So we save time and not rehash things that have been thoroughly gone through with conclusions. And if after they've read that, if they still have an issue, they can come forward then. If they've got something new or something specific they need to understand. Over.
Okay, thanks, Alex. Colin?
You're muted, Colin.
I'm just giving him a few seconds for that to sink in. That's one of the rules I like. If we know who's going next, I think we established that last time. And I think just respecting the format is important, and recognizing there's different formats for conversations. And the ping pong is one. It's not a very useful one with many people in the room if it goes on, like Stacy says, for too long. So ping pongers get a ping pong ticket and get to go to the ping pong room. Don't make the other people leave. Let the group decide that these people are ping ponging and destroying the flow. So I think that's the measure. Are we actually following a thought and talking? Like when Heiner tells me to shut up, I think I'm going off on a different topic or I'm ruining his flow. I'm dangerously over talking right now. So it's very, very difficult to have a stream of consciousness and invite people to interrupt me at the same time, take part in a different kind of conversation. It's like I don't have the adapter to fit in this conversation and be respected. Either over talk, people won't interrupt me for clarification when I want it. There's all kinds of things that I would like people to do for me that I would do for them that other people would think is disrespectful. I'll give you a simple example, putting your camera on, right? So I can see in certain instances, especially when, say, having a one-on-one with Jazz, I would not even anticipate to not have my camera on because I just know that's something that he likes. So, you know, with Sam or with Kayla or Stacy, I don't need my camera on when I'm talking to them, ever. It's like, they know how I feel, you know. So I think it is really leaning into that upper level, like Sam says, coming with the best that you have to offer for what format you're in. And I don't think we realize the different formats. So maybe that's what Josh is talking about. 52 sizes fits all does not work. So, you know, I'm going to end here, but I would like to talk more about being aware of the context of the bounds of the conversation, whether it's a private conversation, whether it's a technology conversation, whether it's a conversation about feeling and empathy. Well, you know, there's so many different conversations. Is it a conversation where you want to be interrupted, or is it a conversation where you're actually presenting something and you want questions at the end? Just simple things. We ain't got it because we don't have the focus, but we do get it from time to time. And I like Sam's attempts and focusing and experimenting. And I'm willing to go through the frustration. And it may make me look crazy to the outside world, but I am delusional in the sense that I think there is a spirit of a we here of some sort that deserves respecting.
Okay, thanks, Colin. Barry or Joshua, you guys can decide who goes first.
I guess we're supposed to decide, Barry, who would like to go first. So I guess we
I love listening to you.
vice versa. That's why it's a hard decision. That's the problem here. So I just wanted to say to you, Sam, I didn't mean to disrespect the conversation. I just heard my name. I was going outside to listen and to actually, you know, I had you in my ear since the conversation started. And I was just making coffee so I can be really focused and be here. And so I got my coffee and you were in my pocket. So I was trying to pull out. I just heard, okay, going once, going twice. And I was like, oh shit, I got to get there in time. And then I want to make sure that I'm answering what you're looking for in terms of, did everybody already say what they felt about the level 14 and were we on another subject? I just wanted to be clear. That was why I asked to clarify, because I didn't know if going once, going twice, okay, was that a different question or was that the same question? So that's where I was coming from. I wasn't trying to piss you off or anything like that. I was just trying to clarify, okay, if it's going to be on the record and we're writing it down, it's going to help everyone. I want to make sure that I'm actually in the right question that was being asked, because I just heard, this is what, from my perspective, I heard, okay, Colin or Josh, go ahead. And then, okay. And I was like, okay, Colin's going to go. I have time to get outside. And then I heard, okay, well, no one said anything. Going once, going twice. Oh shit. And I was trying to turn it on. And I was like, okay, are we still doing what to do at level 14? Or are we doing something different? So that's where I was coming from.
You still have 2 minutes left.
Thanks for clarifying that.
Thank you, Sam. And I don't want to disrespect it anyway.
Okay, and if necessary, you and I can take it offline into a breakout room. Barry, you're on.
Oh, thank you. I wanted to actually clarify 2 points. They're a bit technical, but I think they're important. When I said that I was yelling at level 14, I was actually being hyperbolic because I went back to work out the actual dB. There's like 3 dB difference between every notch from 1 to 10. I was actually at level 12, which is 72 dB. which is about as loud as a person can speak and still articulate words that can be understood as words. You can scream louder than 72 dB, but not with words, just literally screaming. And one of the reasons that kind of came back to me is I was watching an episode of Lucifer on Netflix, and there's a place in that episode right after the funeral of a character who dies unexpectedly, as far as the audience is concerned, and Lucifer is grieving this loss after the funeral, and the psychologist who's counseling him says, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. At which point Lucifer literally blows up. He yells at the psychologist at the loudest level that you can do audio on streaming video and still say words that can be understood by the audience. And so I wanted to point out that I was being hyperbolic when I said 14. It's really 12 on a scale of 1 to 10, which is 72 dB. And the other thing is about whether the word blow up is the correct word, because Stacy was the one person who observed it. And Stacy is the one person who has studied my academic work on dramaturgy, drama theory. And Stacy's actually written up her own synopsis of drama theory. And the first thing she did is she came to me and she said in Messenger, were you being dramatic? And I said, yeah, I was being dramatic because that was the only way that I could determine would express a feeling that was otherwise falling on deaf ears. So first of all, it's technically level 12 if you only want to be specific. And yes, I was being dramatic. And if you want to use the word blow up, I'm not going to stop you, but just as the script writers in Lucifer had him speak to this psychologist at the loudest level that you can do on video, I did the same thing for the same reason. I'll stop there.
Okay, who's next? I don't see a hand up after that. So Alex, you want to go? Alex and Glenn, you guys go, whichever.
Yes, if the consensus around the room in this specific situation is agreeable, then we could say that if people want to have a argument about some point boisterously at level 12, 13 or above, they should ask the moderator to put them in a room, not do it in the middle of the session when other people are present listening, because to some people it's uncomfortable and it's disruptive. And then there's an aftermath that goes on for several weeks about who did it and why. Over.
Glenn, then Colin.
Yeah, well, there's several good ideas here, I think, that have been mentioned. Another practice, which I think would mitigate a lot of this, would be to return to the core purpose of GCC as it was intended in the beginning, which is to highlight the best ideas in the room and the people and their best insights and initiatives, areas of interest, which brings about a focus and a sense of direction and a sense that we're moving forward. And personally, I believe that if a group of people have this feeling that we're moving forward and that something is being created, then this spirit of the we sort of becomes a real thing, and all of the issues that we would otherwise blow up about or comment about just sort of becomes marginalized and just not all that important. So I think this might be a way to look at it, that if we have a blow up and then we have a lot of talk about the blow up afterwards, and then we have a lot of talk about the blow up afterwards, and it becomes this spiraling thing, maybe the main issue is that we're not actually making any progress, and we're not really doing anything very interesting, and the reactions and the conflicts that arise aren't really real conflicts. They're almost like agitation over a feeling of being stuck. So, you know, maybe the most important suggestion would just be to actually just move forward with what we have already agreed on. We have already strongly agreed, probably hundreds of times, that we're all interested in highlighting the best ideas in the room and to build on those, and to highlight the best that the people here have to offer. So that's a sort of a more long-term solution to mitigate all this.
Okay, thanks, Glenn. I have a response to that, but first is Colin.
Go ahead, Sam.
Okay. I'm having trouble actually understanding your specific proposal, because I heard move forward, but I also heard talking about talking about talking about talking is not interesting. So correct me if I'm wrong. So I heard both those items. How do we actually discuss guidelines for conduct if we don't actually talk about the act of that conduct, the act of that conversation? I don't understand how we can actually come up with guidelines unless we discuss, you know, what those guidelines are about. So that's one aspect of meta that I think is necessary if we're talking about these kind of guidelines.
But
So
if we talk
that is-
about it 100 times, if we're talking about 100 times,
well,
agreed
the
100
reason we talk about it 100 times, and I did interrupt you, is because we still don't seem to agree.
because we
don't
don't
have
do
a
it.
shared group memory. We don't seem to have some general consensus. We don't even have individual opt-in a lot of these practices, okay? So that's okay. I mean, that's exactly where we've been for the last 3.5 years. I'm just wondering whether we can do better. So yes, I am looking at how do we do better? And some of that how do we do better is to have more shared common understanding, more shared agreements. So in fact, I will soon bring up the fact that yes, we have written these things down before, as Josh brought up, okay? They're in a spreadsheet. About a dozen of us have actually put in very specific guidelines, and some of us have explicitly not done so, okay? And so I'm looking for, are those insufficient? Could we crystallize them down to 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, or are all 82 open for discussion? Or are we going to add another half a dozen or so today and make it like 90 or so? And that's why I have this curiosity, is how much of this discussion is necessary before we actually exemplify good collaboration? Now, I think it's probably been insufficient because most people looking at either blowups or interruptions or heated ping-ponging would say, we know how to do better than this. And yet we still exemplify a lot of that. So either we're not exemplifying what we know is the best, or we don't really know the best.
That was my point with moving forward. We already know what's the best. We know what we want to do. We'd agreed to it 100 times. Let's freaking do it.
So why do we still not do those best things?
Because we don't do it. That's why we don't do it, because we don't do it. The answer is to do it. Simple.
It's
Very,
simple to
very
say.
simple.
It's
We
simple
don't
to
have
say,
to
Glenn.
discuss it 12 hours. We just have to freaking do it. We know what we want to do. We just got to do it. If
Would
I
you
wanna
have said
get
that to
the
Barry
chair,
2 weeks ago? Would you have said that to Barry 2 weeks ago?
that was a result of a long, long period of all this forward and back.
Yes.
If I want to get up of the chair, I get up from the chair. I don't have 12 hours of discussing the ways I can get up from the chair. It's the same here. We've agreed to the same agreements again and again and again and again and again. It's the
Okay.
same agreements.
Then
There
then it's
are
my
agreements.
turn. It's my turn.
We could just try to do it instead of talking about doing it and talking about all the ways we haven't done it. That's just a suggestion. That's what I mean by moving forward, just to clarify that point.
Okay, Colin, you're on.
I totally appreciate Glenn and Josh, everybody in the room actually is coming here to give something. And everybody here has a value, and that is not lost on me, regardless of whether I can get along with somebody or not. I'm not gonna say, hey, you got different ideas than me, and I'm gonna scream at you until you understand that your ideas are different than mine. That's bullshit. Unless there's some kind of identity or something being threatened underneath of it, some danger. So the only thing that Barry has going for him in this situation is that he was trying to alert people to danger, and that's a good thing to do. But I don't see the danger. I don't think it was necessary, and I'm questioning whether that was actually the appropriate time to show that emotion. So is it something to do with real danger? Is it danger to
Hey,
your
Colin,
ego?
can I interrupt you? Colin, can I
Sure,
interrupt
go
you?
ahead.
Okay.
Sure, go ahead.
Didn't we
Am I
agree that we're
rehashing?
not going to do sense making today? We're only actually going to talk
Yeah.
about proposals for conduct.
Well, that's with the sense making of speaking at decibels and 14s and things. That's kind of just that's not helpful. What's helpful is the fact that, are we going to allow Barry to yell to do his dramatics? And
Right. So Colin, so
maybe
what is the recommended conduct? What is the recommended proposal?
well, the first time Barry yelled at me out of a series of 5 or
Colin,
6.
what is the recommended proposal?
Okay, proposal. A proposal is that if people are going to use dramatology or dramaturgy or whatever he calls it, to try to elicit a certain type of response, I think it's good that the people in this group are in on that. I would rather not be an experiment. I think it's very disrespectful. So I think it's a matter of people knowing, and we still don't know. And what proposal I would have is to, yes, decide whether we're going to allow Barry to yell because it's part of his sense making. And if we agree that's an acceptable behavior. And number 2, I'd also like to see a real conflict resolution, because Barry seems like somebody who's trying to make a point. Whereas other conflicts I've seen in this group, I didn't think people actually wanted to work it out. So there is some hope that Barry wants to get to a bottom of something.
Okay, wait. So Colin, can you specifically then concisely write down what you think is your proposal? Because I'm hearing much that is not actually sounds to me like a proposal.
Okay, let's just go, forget about the conflict resolution. That's a stretch. Let's just put down a proposal. Are we going to allow people to yell in this group without announcing that they're going to yell for effect?
That was a question.
Because, Glenn hit that point really strong earlier, as well as not only yelling, but being an asshole, asking questions rhetorically, painting somebody, but not expecting them to respond. That's another. So there's all kinds of these unfair tactics. Are we going to allow them? Are we going to announce them before we use them, or are we just going to attack each other?
Okay, so the proposal I'm hearing is, let's not allow these behaviors. If I might crystallize this. I heard a lot of words, but I heard, we do not allow these behaviors. And
Unexpectedly,
just write that in, okay?
Yep, unexpectedly, yes. No unexpected crazy behaviors.
Okay, all right. Then Joshua, then Heiner, then Stacy, then Kayla. So Joshua is on.
Yeah, I was just going to clarify what I heard Colin saying. And in a proposal statement, it would be our prime purpose is to help each other. And if we cannot help each other and we're getting upset or something is detracting from the ability to help each other, at least don't hurt each other. So our intention, the agreement is, if we're not helping, to at least don't hurt each other, meaning raise the voice. That hurts the ears. So if we can't help, then just leave it at that. And that's why I agreed to what Stacy was saying, is just turn off the video. And if we're not in a place where we're helping each other, at least don't hurt each other. At least make the agreement of not hurting each other. So that's my statement, is agree to not hurt each other and agree to come with appreciation, respect, and dignity towards each other to help. And if we get to a point where we're not able to do that, at least don't hurt.
Okay, thanks. That's a great opportunity to invoke the Dalai Lama.
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly.
Next is, who did I say? Was it
Heiner.
Heiner? Heiner, then Stacy, then Kayla.
I'm feeling a little bit concerned. I was cited as saying, shut up. Instead, I said, I met a guy at Fifth Avenue, a parodistist in theater, who said, when everybody was complaining all the time, I cannot communicate, you do not communicate, blaming others to not properly communicating. Then I cited him saying, why don't you at least shut up? That is the same like closing your window, be silent. This is a very distinct difference, and it has to do with attitudes. I'm very concerned. I just saw Glenn raising his voice. Some people sometimes have to raise voices. For me, it is the general attitude to have this, how do you say, marathon conversations I don't have the time for, and I don't have the patience for, and I don't know why Barry has the patience for. I experienced here in this group that the undertone is not really like I experienced with North American Indians and traditional people, that they are silent. They never talk about themselves. They don't repeat and talk and talk and talk, but have this serving and gifting attitude. And this is what I'm missing here. I feel sorry for Barry that he finally has to raise his voice after so many hours. I feel very often there are certain people who can make an argument just with one person. And we had it over the years. And some people quarrel with everyone for hours and hours, and the others are bored, or especially the women say, I don't want to be in such an environment. And I really urge you, the American Indians had the token stick or the pipe. You either speak and then you put it back and have the patience, or you toss it around, or you use another method, but not this emotional that a senior experienced educator and cultural guy sometimes says, I am repeating myself. It's like, I cannot communicate with this person. And so maybe Barry should have been then leaving, but to really blame each other with dirty words, like I just heard, asshole, did I hear that right? Or blaming someone being whatever is really discriminatory, and we should really come to a civilized conversation culture. If that can be put into words, I don't know. Maybe the medium is wrong, Zoom is wrong, we should sit together. But as I just discussed it a while ago, or today with Gertrude, sometimes it's again and again and again. And she told me the story with her sister. Sometimes people just separate or divorce, as I said in a session with Yaswinder some months or years ago. Sometimes people are incompatible, and so they better close their video and close their audio, and that's it.
I'm having trouble distilling a specific proposal out of that. It was a lot. There seem to be several proposals. I'm trying to figure out what to crystallize. Anyway, Kayla, if you're still here, Stacy, Kayla says she has to leave soon. So I was wondering whether,
Go ahead, go ahead.
Thanks, Stacy. I'll try to be quick. So I started thinking about what Joshua was about, repeating ourselves. And I thought about Barry, because you're a teacher. And some people just don't get it. So you have to tell them over and over again and write things down different and do things different. And then I started thinking about what Glenn was saying about just do it. And this idea of different types of levels of communication kind of came in my mind, sort of like school. You know, somebody's in the 10th grade versus the 12th grade, whatever. You know, perhaps if we move forward with whatever session that we have, we discuss, like, we're going to talk about a topic, you know, like currency or politics, you know, and we can outline it such as, you know, this is something that's not as triggering, you know, and not set too many guidances. But when we're talking about something very triggering, you know, that's emotional, we could privately say something like, if we're going to be talking about this topic, please keep it to a minimum. Please be kind to each other. And that's just kind of my way of saying, maybe that's a way of moving forward. You know, that way we can discuss these really interesting things instead of discussing how we conduct ourselves. Anyway, that's it.
thanks, Kayla, and thanks, Stacy, for letting Kayla go. Stacy, you're on.
Okay, so I'm going to apologize in advance to you, Sam, because earlier in the call, you tried to guide me away from going, you know, more into one of the proposals, but I want to explain why. I come here with the assumption, I already believe that everybody here is coming to be supportive, to do their best. That's a given. So while normally I don't like putting power in the hands of technology, sometimes I think that some good can be done by making certain decisions arbitrary. So what I'm trying to say is we try to do our best to different degrees, depending on how comfortable we are with the people. What I notice is when we get to the 4-hour mark, because we have a vested interest in making sure that YouTube will give us a transcript, we get off because we know we can't say, oh, please give us more time. So we will adjust our behavior for whatever reason. If we knew that the computer or whatever platform we were on was going to remove us if we continued to act in a certain way, that would make us more cognizant of it. If I know that if I raise my voice to a certain level, I'll automatically be muted, it's almost like, if you think about training animals, and I'm not trying to belittle any of us, but we all have parts of ourselves that are not operating at a conscious level. But what does change our behavior is when there are consequences and we're conditioned that those consequences will happen. So when Barry was talking about going back and forth, I wanted to make it an arbitrary number so that nobody could say, oh, well, when Glenn does it, it's okay. Or when Sam does it, it's okay. But when I do it, it's not. And then I would, so two things. Then I would also say there could also be a human component that overrides it, that presses a button. No, they can continue because the human person understands that the conversation is working well, even though it's not within the guidelines that had already been decided upon. And the last thing I want to say, and this is to you, Sam, and it kind of goes to the interaction between you and Joshua earlier today. And I don't know if it's true, but I've come to the conclusion that I don't always know what your real agenda is, but I trust you enough that I'm here to support you. And I have accepted that you won't always be able to explain to me the fuller picture of what you're looking for. And I make a very conscious decision to say, all right, I'll go a little with that, which is why I got off the subject before. But now I think it's important because I may never get the opportunity to discuss that proposal. We may be talking about so many things for such a long time that I will never get to say that. And with that, I'm complete.
Thanks, Stacy. Alex is on, or do we have someone behind? Okay, then Alex, and then I guess I'll go.
I was just thinking to myself as I listened to Stacy that if we had this emotional response, that's when the alert, we should have some kind of inner mechanism that alerts us to the fact that we're having an emotional response. And it's not appropriate to do that during a GCC discussion. You know, you take that person you're having the response with into a room or offline. And that's been rehashed and discussed previously. So I just wanted to mention that quietly ping-ponging is another aspect that prevents you raising your voice. And an automatic VU meter that mutes the source of the sound if it goes over a certain level is not something that would be too difficult to implement. Over.
Thank you. I was allowing that to settle. I'm not going to directly respond to everybody because a lot of people have gone. I just wanted to go back on this notion of whether guidelines are useful. Okay. We started 3 years ago with people saying, we don't need rules, we don't need guidelines. Okay. To me, that just sounded odd. Okay. Now, today, I've heard some suggestions that, you know, we actually might find some of these guidelines useful. I go back to thinking that if we actually see exemplary conduct from ourselves and from others, we need way fewer guidelines and rules. So where I go on this is always, I'm going to ask myself, is this ping-ponging appropriate? Is this interruption appropriate? Is this blow-up appropriate? Is this F-bomb appropriate? Is this tone of voice appropriate? And is that the best way I show up? And I know I don't do a perfect job of that, but I try to keep that top of mind. I'm just saying, if we all, even just 1% do slightly better, over time, that's going to make a huge impact. And it will also cut down on the number of things we actually have to write down that govern our interpersonal behaviors. Now, I don't think those actually go to zero. There are things that we just want to agree on, okay? For example, let's meet here at 8 o'clock Pacific time on Saturdays, right? Those are guidelines that turn out to be useful. Otherwise, we're not talking to each other, okay? Let's use Zoom. That's a guideline that's useful. Otherwise, we're not talking to each other, unless we make a totally separate agreement about that. So let's not 7 people talk all at the same time. That's useful because otherwise we don't understand each other. So certain guidelines really do enable us and empower us. But there's a number of them that are about individual behavior that if we just do it internally, we don't need to have as external rules or conduct or guidelines. And one rule of thumb is, if I were just a newcomer and I see this behavior, would it make me stay or would it make me leave? It doesn't matter necessarily the makeup of that newcomer, right? Just assume they're just a regular person, you know, one of the other 8 billion on the planet. They've got their own norms, but their norms, you know, we only do the best we can, right? So they're going to say, well, I don't normally see people arguing as the exemplar of best behavior unless they dig deep and stick around and hear what's underneath all of that. But typically people are not that patient. So I'm trying to figure out how can we be those exemplars by putting in just enough guidelines, but relying mostly on ourselves to look at what good means. Over. Glenn?
Yeah, I like that point a lot because there's a very big difference between guidelines that we try to follow ourselves and guidelines we expect from others and that we even want to try to enforce, because those are the rules that become crippling when we have lots of rules of how we should speak that we want to enforce on others. I think that's a total death trap for a space like this. I mean, it just becomes completely crippling and completely trivial and idiotic very, very quickly if we try to micromanage other people's behaviors and so, well, there you did that, you shouldn't have done that, well, you just did, you know, that kind of dynamic can be self-replicating and can repeat itself. Like, for example, last Sunday, there was a short sequence where people interrupted one another to point out that the others had interrupted one another, and it became the self-replicating loop. And that's a whole version of the same theme, right? So, but if you have guidelines for how to behave yourself, it's a very different story. I can try to exemplify certain behaviors, and if other people do different behaviors, I can let that pass. And if we are gathered together and we're actually doing something that's really interesting, that's really engaging, that's really connected to our core passion for being here, this stuff just isn't going to happen. We're not going to have 2 hours meta conversation about what happened and how it should be done and how. Just won't happen. We just sail past it. So that was kind of in my mind when I mentioned this point about just doing it, moving forward. Where is the passion? Like what are the different people in the room here really passionate about? I'm not interested in what they want to avoid. I'm interested in where they want to go. And if there's a focus, a group focus towards where the different people really want to go and what they really want to share, then there's suddenly an active energy and there's a sense that we're moving forward. And all the thought policing, all the reactions, that just fades away. It never even enters. And I can be responsible to be my best self, and that's going to help others try to be their best self. And when I, do whatever differently and others do whatever differently, we don't have to comment on it. We can just let it slide and immediately move on, immediately to what we're actually gathered here for, which is because each person here has some very big ideas, very complex, big ideas and different projects that we want to move forward. And it's in the interest of everyone here, I believe, to assist also the others in moving their projects forward, because it's the kind of projects that complement one another And Stacy made a small observation last week, which I think flew a little past. And there's certain ideas that can contain all other ideas. And my hypothesis is that if we look at the big vision of the different people here in the room, those ideas are of that sort, that had space for all the other ideas to fit within one another. So, you know, if we really focus on that and work on that, then all this sort of drama, it sort of fades a little in the background. It's not center stage, and we avoid these traps of these recursive, self-replicating meta level commentary on commentary on commentary on commentary on commentary loops, because that's the kind of stuff we can get into sometimes. And I've noticed that pattern here, and that then you get into the area of sort of policing other people's behaviors and what they say, and it's a very, you know, restrictive, trivial, and boring kind of discussion that just doesn't go anywhere. It just has no future. It is in a dynamic that just will continue like that, and it's like, so, you know, guidelines is for me. For the others, you know, it's true though, like Sam said, if he's a moderator, sometimes, you know, he has to, you know, step in. But that being so, please, let's get back to the real issue here, why we're really here, what we're really interested in. We just fly past 90% of these issues. They'll never even come up. Yeah, finished.
Thanks, Glenn. Colin, then Stacy.
Okay, first of all, how much time do you people expect me to continue, regardless if I'm talking about A or B? You know, like, that's something I have to consider, and I hope we all consider that. Have I considered my thoughts of what I'm talking about? Well, in this group I am, because I'm not here for pleasure and enjoyment, although I can't say that's 100% statement. I think there is a certain circadian rhythm to this group that is part of me for some reason. I think it's because I have conversations here that are still ongoing. And one of those has been repeated several times. So I try not to bring it up during main time, but I'm under the illusion we can make an agreement on this if the after show is more of an open session or not, where, you know, we have a certain format we agree on for the main show, low interruption, blah, blah, blah. But the after show is a little different. That's the impression I'm under. The moderator's gone. It's after school. We can hang around in the music club and make a song. We can jam. We can do something. And one of the times I tried to do that failed miserably when I was accused of being a spy and all this weird stuff. Like, I wish that would have been dealt with at the time, because that really affected me. It really changed the direction of things. It was a real Heiner asshole thing to do. I say asshole, and I don't mean Heiner's an asshole. I mean, Heiner said I can't say the word asshole. It was an asshole thing to do. And we talked about that, tried to have conflict resolution about that. I still hear about it. It's still not buried. It's kind of irrelevant for me moving forward, but it's living in that other person still. I felt attacked. They felt degraded. I don't know. So that's there. That never got fixed. Part 2. When the blow up happened, I was engaged with Glenn in an after show with something I knew was important to Glenn and something he wanted to know what I thought. And he was trying hard to write it in different ways to get through to me so that I could see his point of view. Barry does not respect that because he doesn't know about that conversation. And he saw something totally different. This is my theory of mind. Don't freak out, Barry. You can tell me if I'm wrong. At least give me the the freedom to say what I think. Okay, so what I think happened was Barry was trying to correct something. I don't know, he went off about terms. I never even really watched it really closely. We should go back, but that's
Hey, Colin, can I interrupt a bit? Can I interrupt a bit? This
Sure, I
sounds to me
appreciate
more
it.
like sense making. And I apologize to the group if it's not, but it sounds to me more like.
Well, I think Glenn was doing sense making too, and I'm just tying on to that because I think it was very important. And I'm trying to get to the fact that we move ahead with intention, not with rules. And you know, we put the guidelines in the sheet ourselves. We answer them ourselves, like Glenn said. We put the terms in there. We give our terms. And if anybody wants to be so arrogant as to take power over somebody and yell at them because their terms aren't good, that should be unacceptable. Especially when it's side-blinded in the middle of an important conversation in an after show where I'm giving my ideas to Glenn of why burden of proof is so important. And more to the fact, I was trying to get to Glenn, and what is it that you want to do? And why does this matter? Like this possibilities and the superstructure, like how does that hook into your vision? Does it matter? In the end, we found out that Glenn isn't making any super claims that need to be defended. He's just making room for possibilities. But that conversation was completely ruined by Barry that day. And maybe Barry has a great reason. Why don't we find out what that reason was? We still don't know what the danger was. Anyway, thank you.
Okay, Stacy's on.
So I had put a proposal in the chat, which actually kind of addresses what Colin just said. But what I've noticed is that 90% of the, I'm making a large proportion of the issues that we come across appears to me that people are trying to explain themselves. They feel like they've been misunderstood and they are concerned about how others are going to view them. And while if somebody has really strong spiritual muscles, they've learned not to explain themselves, most of us do care about how we think other people are looking upon us. So yes, we can work on that as individuals, but not everybody's going to choose to or want to. And so a proposal like, if you would like to explain something that you may have, that you feel you may have been misunderstood about, not factual, request time at the end of the call rather than diverting the conversation. So that's all I had to say.
Okay. So Colin, I'm going to assume that your hand up is just because you haven't lowered it. And
Actually, I would like to reply to Stacy just shortly. I think that need to be heard is a thing that we need to recognize in the formats of what we're doing, one way or another. I would like to talk about formats of different shows for different purposes, for different interests. It gives us the power to channel a little bit better, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Thank you.
okay, I'm going to go next. I'm going to bring up a topic that I think I've alluded to at least 2 or 3 times in the last 3 years. Okay, and that is this notion of skill. The communication, listening, collaboration are skills. And the skills can be learned. Well, first you have to appreciate it if you want to actually learn it. But without an appreciation, there's going to be no motivation to learn. And to learn, you've got to have some notion of what doing it well looks like, feels like, acts like, sounds like. And so I will myself probably very explicitly, in a sense, shift gears. I'm going to be much more sensitive myself to these skills in myself and in others. And where there is relatively little appreciation for these skills, I will probably interact less. Because this is, Glenn says, we'd all like to just do it. But practically, Glenn, I don't understand that statement. In a sense, Barry was just doing it in the moment. That was the best Barry knew how to do in the moment. Barry even says it was intentional. It was for dramatic effect. I don't think there was a danger there. I don't think he was alerting us to any danger. I think that's not how it lands for me. Okay. So I do think that just doing it is just a very personal statement that just lets everybody pretty much do what they want to do. And without mentioning this notion about skills, then, you know, I don't know that it changes anything. We're all just doing it. So unless there's a direction, unless there's a light at the end of the tunnel or a sun, you know, shining overhead or whatever you want to use your vision technique to be, just doing it is just us being us yet again. And if that's the case, then we're just like 8 billion people, just us being us. So where's the value here? The value here, to me, is in sharing some common understanding of what we're trying to co-vision, co-create, co-imagine, collaborate. That does talk about behavior when that behavior becomes a detriment. And when you say just let it go, yeah, you can do that once or twice. But if it comes to pattern, then it does, in my opinion, need to be addressed. And Barry said it's happened 4 times. I'm not just singling out Barry. I'm just saying I probably didn't catch the 5th. I'm just saying there are there are several such examples of behaviors that detract from what we're trying to do. Now, to me, understanding that, if we get to the bottom of it, would be a huge accelerator, would be a huge accelerant. If we don't, then those things continue to recur. And then we're just like no other group. Sorry, every other group. So to me, the uniqueness of this group is really trying to understand those deep issues. What blocks collaboration? What blocks communication? Other groups are doing this, but I think we're doing it in a relatively different way, with no power over, trying to see what emerges, try to see what shared group memory can actually do for us. And over time, learning what the lack of shared group memory costs us. We've each seen that cost. And yet we still don't yet, in my opinion, have a proper appreciation for it. So there's one thing from seeing one effect, but appreciating what we could potentially do, I think still remains to be embraced. So that's, to me, a context for, you know, hearing you, Glenn, in specific, and really try to say, can we really do the best we can? And how do we do that? Because internally, by ourselves, we don't. We just do the same thing over and over. We can only do it if we're actually examining some of this and really understanding what are at the roots of it. That's why I'm here. Over.
I should clarify what I meant by just do it is just do what we've already agreed we want to do, which is to highlight the best ideas in the room, which was the proposal of the original GCC proposal. So I believe that if we just do that, then we're gonna sail past a lot of this drama, which doesn't lead to any understanding. It just leads to a lot of noise. Now, I can see there might be a way we could use whatever comes up in a constructive way to learn. I get this principle, and it's a beautiful thing, but I don't see it actually happening unless there is a common direction. That's the problem. Maybe some of the unblocking sessions actually are blocking sessions, make us more blocked because there's no direction. I think we have to have a direction. And we've already, yeah.
I was gonna let you finish, so please finish.
Yeah, no, please say what you had in mind there.
I don't know who said this. If you don't know where you're going, you're likely to get there.
Heiner.
You're
Before
likely to get there?
you're likely to get there. If you don't know where you're going, you're likely to get there.
Sort of like.
I haven't heard
In
that
other words,
before.
if you
Yeah, I
don't
get
know where you're going, any place is fine. Okay? Which is why I agree with you, Glenn, that unless you have a direction, unless you have a vision, a charter, just talking is Brownian motion. I don't think that's what we're doing here. You see a vision, I see a vision, several others see visions. We may not see the same vision, but we're actually trying to go towards something that's generally that direction. It's not that direction, but it's generally in that direction, okay? So I see that we're actually trying to unblock ourselves. To me, I do think that, just like if you get down to the root of things, that core element, if we understand it, that's a magnification of power if we could actually just resolve it at those roots. That's what I'm hoping we do. I can't prove that we're going to be able to do it, but that's what I'm hoping we do. If we keep asking the question, how do we communicate better? How do we listen better? How do we collaborate better? How do we, make ideas form together better? How do we do emergence better? Maybe we'll come up with some insights. But in the same time, we're trying to look at what blocks us. And if we can eliminate those blocks, or at least mitigate them, hopefully do a better job of all of this co-creation. That's my mental model around why we're here. And yes, we are trying to put together ideas, but how can you put together ideas if we don't even record them in some way, write them down, put them side by side, contrast? That's why, to me, all this shared group memory stuff, it sounds boring to some of you that have heard it hundreds of times, but unless we do it, yes, we are going to have these conversations over and over and over and over because we're not remembering. We're not remembering in group memory. It sounds pedantic, but practically that's what happens. I could say 3 years ago, in theory, yes, this is what's going to happen. Now I don't have to say in theory because we've got the proof in real life. So I go back to these themes. It does sound pedantic, but it does form a foundation. If we can understand focus, if we can understand prioritization, if we can understand listening, if we can understand personal presentation, if we can understand accountability, if we explicitly understand good, if we understand what good behavior means for each of the others, not just us, ourselves, those are all elements of helping doing this better, which is why I keep saying those are the core things that I'm orbiting in this space. And until we put them together in a way that makes sense, they're going to keep coming and keep coming and keep coming. That's the Pema Chodron lesson. If you don't learn the lesson, you're always still in class. Class will be every single day until you learn that lesson. And we're still not learning some of these lessons. And that's why these conversations recur. And you can say, oh, geez, I'm sick and tired of it. Fine, okay? You can either opt out or you can provide something that's new that helps us unblock. I'd rather the latter. Even if it comes with a few, volcanic moments. Because I think we each do see that everybody else here is coming here with good intentions and hopefully trying to, do a good job of co-creation. Even though in certain moments it butts up in difficult ways. You get the tectonic shift, sorry, tectonic. Anyway, that's why I'm still trying to figure out if we can lean into these difficulties, understand them, unblock ourselves, then the co-creation part, the co-visioning part, the actual, barn raising and foundation laying will happen better. That's my fundamental belief. Over. Colin's got his hand up. Then Alex. Or Alex and then Colin, I forget which.
I'll go first. It's about the
Uh,
leveling up.
What was
I
that?
was letting Sam's idea settle, not giving you the slot, new rules.
Well, let me just make a meta comment. The fact that it's been brought up here doesn't necessarily mean it's a new rule. I mean, we can have pairwise agreement, but we haven't yet determined at all, not even close, what group agreement means. So we have personal opt-in, but we don't yet have any kind of a group agreement. Let me just put that out there as my understanding, okay? So I'm not making assumptions about the fact that, hey, somebody said XYZ, therefore we're all going to adopt XYZ as a new rule. I've not made that assumption. Over.
Yeah, no, I understand. I nodded and I turned my microphone on, but then I waited, just let that sink in, and I was getting close to talk. So, you know, I think we should have more mindfulness, and I'm not upset that Alex tried to talk when you said I was next. It's just the way it is. We just have to be more
I did
mindful.
also call his name, yeah.
Yeah. So, and I will offer my turn up if somebody's in the middle of a flow, right? And we're still in the main show, so I'm being very careful not to overtalk, which is hard for me. When Sam was saying that that's what we're doing is unblocking here, and when Glenn said maybe unblocking is doing some blocking. Well, I think blocking just happens, and unblocking is I think targeted at the eye blocks. So, you know, I think maybe unblocking should be called unblocking the eye. And you know, Gertrude has an even more specialized unblocking show. To unblock, I don't even want to characterize it, but the possibilities within, maybe, you know, she's trying to unblock the possibilities, and that's a very I thing as well, but could relate to other people. Maybe barn raising is unblocking the we, and I see that when I want to do stuff, I can join into a general conversation, try to influence people into certain ways, but not expect people are going to go my way. Talking about maps and memory and fair conversation, and how to be able to, you know, come up with some symbology so that we know when something seems to be uncomfortable in the room. I've talked to other people about what's happened here, and people do get uncomfortable. I used to be very uncomfortable too, but I'm getting used to Barry, so it doesn't make me uncomfortable. In fact, I hope Barry is feeling comfortable and not feeling under attack, because that wouldn't be very useful. Even though we all make mistakes, and I think that this is about what Barry did this time. You know, this has gone around a lot of times. So you know, Barry's just, are we ready to deal with it is the question. And how would we deal with it? So, and deal with the unblocking. What are we unblocking? Well, I see the magic part is the agile teams, which is what was so exciting to me. Hey, that's Glenn saying, let's do something. Or the Trello, where you write down things that, hey, I'm going to do something. Or Zulip, I'm going to zoom in on a conversation with Glenn about, you know, burden of proof, and we're going to do something. And I'm going to ask him, how does this matter? Like, how does that get us from here to there? Or are we just supposed to dream we're already there, like Gertrude does? Maybe, you know, maybe that's Glenn's style. So when you're with Glenn, get ready for being in the possibility space. When you're with Doug, get ready to be in the unblocking I space. When you're with Sam, get ready to be in the unblocking we space. And overall, how do we do it without following rules like, if we don't like it, we'll just shun this person, leave them behind, we'll go to another room. Fuck them. Like, that's childish. I think we're way above that. The suggestion bothers me. Although I like the converse, where two people say, you know what, I just hit it off with you, we're about to sidetrack the room. If everybody wants to know what we're talking about, we'll do it here in the open. Otherwise, why don't we take it offline, go somewhere, because I want to talk to you about this now, or maybe we'll talk about it later. So it's those channels. But 90% of what I do is not actually is not actually code here. Like I've written some code and I've done some things, but 90% of what I'm doing here is more mindfulness of what's important, channeling, understanding, and to do it in a larger group with people with varied backgrounds. And do we challenge people's ideas, or do we, like Sam said, just point in the general direction? I guess it depends on how important it is. And if someone gets triggered, then maybe you found something important that we should dive into, not to blame somebody, but to say, you know, where was the danger really? Is it the fact that this person is just a militant atheist that's lost and they can't think and they're going to destroy the group and make us all divergent? Or is that they're overwhelming and they talk too much and they want to draw maps and they want to ask too many questions to try to contextualize everything, and it's just, oh, it's too much engineering? Like, you know, where's the middle ground? And that's why we need different conversations. Because I'm sure Tyra doesn't want to hear about my technical problems and help me unblock those. Maybe Sam would, I don't know, or Joshua, Glenn, whoever. So, you know, I think it is respecting the fact that it's a group and we're individuals. And I think I heard Sam say one time in somewheres where the true hope of collective intelligence is helping an individual who has an idea bring it forward. Not that we're all going to come together and make some soup together. And then, you know, there's those projects too. I'm not presupposing anything other than it's usually a few people who come up with an idea that actually move forward. And I think Sam's looking for those ideas and to help bring forward that have communication written around them so he can understand what's going on, as opposed to just philosophizing, which this group does. So maybe we need a Monday philosophy show and bring back the micro experiments show for, you know, people who want to collaborate, but, you know, like Barry suggests, is probably not the right format for the larger group, but something that we want to capture in the group and something we want to call part of the group without alienating people, which is disgusting. Anyway, thank you.
Alex, then Kayla.
Yes, up leveling to the skills, the dynamic interaction in collaborology and co-visioning is the up leveling of skills to the level 2 agreement level, because that's where sprouts occur. And if your communication skills are polished, well polished, or even reasonably polished, you can transfer the idea about your gem to others in the group long enough and hard enough so that they will go and have a look and probably get involved in doing some interaction and discussion about that in a breakout session. Over.
Thanks, Alex. Kayla.
This question is for Stacy. Stacy, a couple of times you mentioned something about asking people something. There's like an idea, like if you had something specific to ask, you would ask a specific person.
Oh, you mean, I think you're referring to like wanting to know what I might feel is interesting about you that I want your opinion on. Is that what you mean? Like there are certain people that I look at with expertise in different areas, and that's what I would ask them about. And I suggested that if we kind of as a group did that with other people, then the individual could choose which of those things that they already know are of interest, at least to some, they can speak about. Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you tell us a little more about that? Just because, I don't know, it's different.
Well, the underlying assumption is that we all want to be heard. And sometimes we go to spaces and we're putting out what we want to be heard, but the people in that space don't necessarily want to hear it. And that's okay. That's not a bad thing. It's okay that we have different interests. So the goal is to find something that meets the needs of both the speaker and the listener. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for asking. because I love to talk too.
Me too.
Unless there's somebody else ready to go, I'll go. Glenn, why don't you go, then I'll go.
Yeah, just briefly, I think that ties a little bit in with some of the things that I said earlier, that if you have a space where we focus on what each person has to bring, you know, their unique experience, talents, gifts. I think that's one of the success recipes, because we've tried that. And when we have done that, it's very noticeable how different the dynamic is. So I'm very interested in, you know, hearing each person here speak about what they love speaking about, and, you know, what's on fire for them, because that's probably how they would personally feel most heard. They would be most happy speaking about something they're very interested in, and it would be more rewarding for everybody else. So I think there's a connection with this idea and this general idea of just highlighting the best that people have to offer in the room. Yeah.
Yeah, if I could just jump in, because this is a really important distinction. The reason I think it's important to also know what people want to hear from you is it has to be mutual. There are certain people that I really don't want to hear their advice on how to get along with other people. Because while I might trust their integrity, that they're going to be honest, I may not trust their skill set or the way they view their skill set. So it really has to be an interactive thing between the speaker and the listener.
That's where questions come in.
Exactly.
Okay, I'll go, and then Barry. Okay. I'm actually coming up with an idea for a new conversation stream, separate from barn raising, constituted differently. And I guess that's all I'll say right now on that one. Barry, you're on.
Yeah, I just wanted to amplify what Stacy was talking about. The first time that I came to GCC with this group, which was back in October 17th of last year. I didn't know anybody here, I think maybe except Stacy. Everybody else was a stranger to me. And I don't know how many people who are here today were there that day back in October. But Kayla had brought up an ask. And the ask was that one of her children was having some emotional problems with school, with attending to school lessons, and was looking for some guidance on dealing with these emotional issues in the context of learning. And I pricked up because that's my research. I've been doing research on emotions and learning for 35 years. And so I responded to Kayla and presented in about 10 or 15 minutes a concise summary of this material for Kayla's benefit. And for me, that day, October 17th, 2020, was my highlight with GCC. That was the best session I ever attended of GCC. Now it's what, 8 months later, and here we are.
Well, it is what we make it.
Yeah.
Since
That's the
Sam
session you
brought,
spoke about
I'm sorry.
emotions. Yeah. I was just wondering if that was the session where you spoke about emotions and learning.
Yeah, I brought the slides and I gave a very succinct summary of 35 years of research in material that would take a semester to present at the graduate level. And I gave Kayla like a 15 or 20 minute concise summary so that if she wanted to follow up on it, she knew exactly where she could find a subject matter expert relevant to the ask.
So Sam, since you brought up that new stream coming, I came here, I wanted to ask, because, I've been thinking about, a show that I would like to do, and I would like to do it within the GCC. And I wasn't sure, obviously I get my own account, but I wasn't sure if I should ask Doug for a link or you for a link, or how it works if I wanted to be affiliated with GCC, which I do.
Yeah, I mean, pick a time, pick a charter, and then schedule it.
Cool, okay,
And one of us can, set up a link or however it
Sounds
can be
good.
managed logistically.
all right, thanks.
Just like, Alex has set up Wednesdays.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure who to ask or how to, I wasn't sure like how to get the link or who. Okay,
Well,
got it.
that's where I feel like I have some subject matter expert to give in the group when I'm talking about formats and different things. And that's a lot of the reason behind my mapping, to try to find out the different characteristics of the different offerings. And it's quite variable depending on who you ask. It'd be interesting, Barry was talking about retrospective. If he saw somebody new come into the group and ask the same questions he asked, would he have a deeper appreciation for that person's confusion? Which is the way I felt when Barry was asking those questions. I felt like I had a deeper appreciation for his confusion within the realms of what this experiment is we're doing here. I see it as an experiment. So yeah, I did have another point to make. It's regarding having spaces for certain conversations, and fair conversations first are against bullying and lying, which I never expected we'd have to worry about here. So it comes to find out after all the time I've been here, that's the most important thing to do, is to ward off against the bullying and the lying. And come to find out a few weeks ago, there's a science in trying to understand people who do that. What is it, agnotology or something? So Sam's thinking about having a new channel is nothing. This might be groundbreaking, or this might be just another experiment, because Sam has done several in different formats, which is what I think we all should be doing. The idea of having a channel for the GCC was my question a few months ago, of whether we've reached that milestone of communication specialty yet, that we could feel like we are a group that would have a funded channel that anybody in the world who attends regularly and is, meets certain standards of what we would call trust, can start scheduling to have their own format, GCC format, or whether that's actually, what is the emergence of the GCC thing? That's the memory and the mapping. So, part of me asking for us to come to a proposal about having a GCC account that doesn't get cut off at 4 hours because somebody's going to lose the transcripts or whatever, or we've got the details thought out with the technical people. It's work. That's why it's never been done before. So by default, Sam's answer is correct, right? Like, just do it any way we can. We'll help you. What do you need? Nothing formal. In fact, it's at the point now where Sunday is no longer a dynamic repository. It's unless somebody records it themselves. And if shout out to Alex, if you have any recordings you'd like to add to the pile, we can add them. To talk to Samurai about adding to the GCC spreadsheet if you haven't already. So there's things that we can do there to guide these channels of what I would call higher quality conversations. And I was listening to the Stoa last night, and there's not only the Steel Man, the Straw Man, there's also Hollow Man, what was the other one? It was beautiful. There's a few others, but I think Kryptonite Man was one, or I don't know, Iron Man or something, which is a steel man on steroids. Anyway, they went through and they did all these exercises at the Stoa. It was kind of interesting, but you know, that's what I would like to see, the positive motion towards things where people are, I guess the way to sum it up is not only do we have to defend against bullies and liars, but we have to move beyond them by holding our beliefs, holding our truths strongly but lightly. Go ahead, Sam. I said it earlier.
You're saying strong opinions, lightly held.
Right. That holds our boundaries. That holds the definitions of these different spaces. But if we find out we're wrong, like the scientist or anybody else, we can change. And if our identities are so staked in the ground that, you know, the word becoming is a trigger, then, you know, it's something that has to be dealt with in the group. For Glenn, I think the trigger word is superstructure. Don't tell Glenn there's not a superstructure, right? But Glenn's not going to get upset about it. He's going to say, well, you'll be surprised when I do my work and move towards that direction. So yeah, saying that somebody's an expert in an area, but really is you can probably find somebody else who's an expert who has a different opinion. So it's really a matter of, and that's what I feel here. Got Doug and Sam, who I consider space experts. Sorry, Sam, for the space word. Generative space and doing space. And if you try to do doing in the generative, you get in trouble or it doesn't work as well. Square pegs, round holes. That's my message. Square pegs, round holes. Thank you.
It's coming close to the top of the hour. Kayla's got her hand up. And then we can invite a round of checkouts. Glenn's got his finger up.
I think Alex had his hand up before me.
I've got a topic for Wednesday about unblocking, about the whole process of collaborology and collaborating and leveling up agreement. So that's to take on Wednesday topic. Over.
Okay. This could be my checkout too. I was thinking about my dance group and what Stacy said. And I really like how she said, you want to highlight the best of people. And I think, Sam, originally, that's kind of what barn raising was about, bringing your ideas, you know, and highlighting the best of everybody. In my dance group, you know, it was what, 150 to 100 people. We all competed individually. We all did solos. We all had to do solos in our respective categories. And I loved it because it brought out the best of us individually. And as a group, we were more in sync because we had that skill set. And it also contributed to the overall win of our group. And when we came together in such a strong way, we stayed with each other for years. I mean, there are people who grew up knowing dance. It's a safe space, it's a cultural place. It highlights the best of you. So I like that idea, Stacy, and I'd love to see that in fruition. And that's my checkout. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll also check out. That's also obviously what I want to see, and what I would love to see be more and more the focus of these kind of meetings, to highlight the best of the different people. So naturally, I'm interested in learning about Sam's idea for a new stream, what Stacy wanted to bring, and Colin's mapping and basically, you know, the initiatives that are present, and follow the passion. I think this somehow is a recipe for these kind of decentralized generative communities that don't have any clear hierarchical structure, and they tend to, you know, not like too many rules. I think that this is maybe a sort of a general architecture to make it work, to just have a culture that really tries to lift all the people up and highlight the best they have to offer. So I've said this 100 times before, but I still believe that to be true. And my experience has been that the times that this has happened in meetings like these, it's been far more interesting. And I also, you know, do receive that point that there is a connection with, you know, a written repository. You know, if we want to actually do this, we do need to follow it up in some kind of written form. So so now we have this space in Sulip, and I think it's very you know, very positive to use this space. And I've used it a little bit, but yeah, I will try to add something there. And you know, maybe that discussion that I had with Colin, I think it's a very interesting discussion. I mean, as interesting as any, almost, I want to say. And you know, it could be a good opportunity to, you know, go a little further into that. And then my ask is that if I do share something there, that you try to understand, you know, read the whole thing, understand. But also, I'm very happy if people have suggestions for changing, reformulating some of those things. So that can be a structure for a written co-creation. And in Sulip, you can copy everything on the clipboard. And because of the threads, I think it's the easier way to do it, to copy the text and make clear what it is you're answering. But I've said this before as well, I'm sort of inviting anyone, if I do share something there, I would be more than happy if you just try to improve it and share another version of it, which you think might be better or might at least be interesting, like an interesting alternative. So that is a project which I think is very promising, where we could, one, share our best or something we think is good, something we think is interesting with the rest, then read it. And if they see something that we haven't seen, you know, they can share a different alternative. So it's like a version 1, version 2, version 3, version 4. And if we were to do this forward and back over a long period of time, then that would, you know, truly be an act of co-creation, where something new would emerge from several minds. And that would require that instead of commentary or criticism and that kind of stuff, the answer will actually be a specific suggestion for a reformulation. And that could be a very different reformulation as well. So, you know, if I write a long post, very interesting if someone has an idea for a very short version of it. Or if I write something that's very sort of academic in language, if someone has a very artistic or poetic or humorous way of expressing a similar point, that would also be within what one could do. So so those are the kind of initiatives that I think would be very interesting in service to collective intelligence and understanding, and it would really be in the spirit of this lifting people up and highlighting the best that the different people have to offer. And I'll say nothing could be a better way to do that than to build on their best ideas and make that ball roll. Then some very, very interesting things could emerge, because I see every person here has a lot of understanding and some really awesome ideas and very interesting stuff. It's big stuff, complicated stuff, yeah, but it's audacious, right? It has the global perspective. So it's naturally the kind of things that we would need to iterate and iterate and iterate until it really, becomes relevant. So yeah, hope something like that could happen in Sulip, and ideally that it could happen here as well, and that there could be a mutually beneficial feedback loop between what's happening there and what's happening here, where we can deepen the inquiry. And so the last thing that I wanted to mention was that it seems to me that all of this is dependent on some kind of pre-established attitude where we are here to learn, we're here to grow, and sort of if that framework is established, then all of these specific initiatives can really get rolling very, very quickly without these kind of reactions that kind of don't really serve the purpose. And you don't need to take anything personally. Then you can let the benefits, give people the benefit of the doubt. If there's this context established, but really, yeah, we're here to learn. We're here to grow something. Everything we present, it's not intended to be complete. Something interesting we put into the pool of ideas, and it could grow with many directions. Yeah, I think I'll let that be my last word. And it's good just to be with you guys.
Thanks, Glenn. I see Josh, Stacy, Alex, and then I'll go.
Let me lower my hand so I don't forget before I even start. That's a good rule, so I don't confuse you, Sam, later. Yeah, I'll also do the checkout at the same time. And my intention coming here years ago was to learn how to be in a conversation that has no start, no end, but has people involved, and to learn from each other. And in taking that conversation 4 times a week to other conversations during the week, to provide more value outside of these conversations to others, and then to invite others into these conversations. And I hope I've done that in inviting people here to our Zoom calls. And my goal is to help people with new conversations that haven't even started, and older projects that have been going on for many, many years, such as Doug Engelbart's conversation that he started before he passed on, which is to create technologies that help and improve the world to be a better place. And so what that looks like is supporting people's projects so that not only do they get funded with monetary gain, but get funded with the help of other people's ideas to support them so that they can move forward. And when I heard Glenn say earlier, move forward, it's not an unintentional move forward, because that's just anarchy. It's an intentional move forward towards a goal. And it's okay to fail. It's okay to have a goal, complete it, and it didn't help. It stops, and then something else gets created. So I guess what I'm trying to say, to be more succinct and clear, is if there are intentions here within the group, if we can learn how to call each other in on either private conversations or do it here in a group conversation, so that that person is supported in their personal goals. And if they become collective goals, that's awesome. And I hope that we support each other individually first, and then as a group second, as opposed to doing the latter. I think that is where we sometimes fail, is we're trying to get a group consensus and then go back to the individual, as opposed to the other way around, starting with the individual. What are your needs, Stacy, Barry, Sam, Kayla, Glenn? What are the individual needs? How can we support those? And then when we come into the group conversation, we can ask if that's being supported individually, and thus that creates a group collective, if that makes sense. And that's my checkout, is to start with the individual and move towards the collective. And when you said, Sam, we were some months back about Agile, I asked you the question, how many people does it need to be on an Agile team? And you said you can do it with one. So instead of pulling everybody into my own personal projects and trying to communicate what I would like to do and what the group to do, I just separated, did that thing, and then I'm going to ask for support from everyone later on. And if it's interesting to you guys, please support, you know. And I've mentioned different projects I'm doing, but I'll clearly communicate in later collaborations. And if it's interesting to individuals, or the whole group says, oh yeah, let's devote some time to that, awesome. And then I don't want to suck all the energy out of the group. I want to stand up everyone else's individual projects and collaborology and thus and so forth. I won't take any more time, but that's my intention for being here. And with that, I'm complete. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Josh. Stacy, you're on.
I will do what Josh said and lower my hand. Oh, I wanted to go back to what Glenn had said when he said that, you know, if he puts down something and somebody wants to give a suggestion, to me, that's the time that you might want to ask a question. That's when I think it's important to say, is there a specific reason you need this? Would it be the same if it changed to that? And I'm trying to move from the yeah, but to the yes, and. So like I said before, sometimes we don't know what somebody else's greater goal is. So they might be using certain words for a reason. Sometimes those words are purposeful and sometimes they're arbitrary. So instead of changing their words or thinking you can make it better, first inquire as to whether or not there's even a reason that those words are being used. My personal experience, going back to the beginning of this group, was that I would ask a question, and instead of somebody answering my question, they would tell me what they think I needed to know. And they didn't know why I was asking the question. And that was very frustrating. So I just wanted to point that out.
Thanks, Stacy. Okay, I'm going to check out. But I'm going to zoom out a little bit, okay? To me, there's like 3 ways to live. If you take a look at where we're going, eventually, sooner or later, something's going to collide with this planet, and nothing any of us does will have ever made any difference. That's one perspective, okay? Unless some of us manage to get off this planet and, you know, inhabit other worlds. That's one perspective. If you take that perspective, then the role of this species, and perhaps, you know, some of us in this species, is to see whether we can actually become that. You know, it's basically going from Kardashev level N to Kardashev level N+1, if you guys know that terminology. Okay.
Say it again.
A Kardashev civilization, he indicates like 3 or 4 levels of civilization. Kardashev level 1, I think, is, you know, that civilization which can harness the energy of the planet. I think level 2 is something like you can actually take the solar system and then, you know, go to the galaxy and then go beyond that. So those are his wildly huge magnitudes of difference between levels of civilization, just based on the amount of energy it can harness. That's one perspective, in that if we don't manage to go elsewhere other than this planet, nothing we do ever, is going to amount to anything. Okay. There's a second perspective, which is, yeah, that's all external. What if we go internal? What if we really, really go deep into understanding existence, nature, coherence, thought, etc., and just really concentrate on that and really be the purest form of living being that we could potentially be, which sounds like an opposite to perspective number one. To me, there's a third. A third is to recognize that there is a chance for each of these beings, I, you, us, to connect and expand our capacities, our being, our potential way beyond that of a single individual. I think there's ways to merge 1, 2, and 3 to be living a very, very interesting life. But 3 requires that we learn about each other and learn how to communicate, how to collaborate, connect, share, ideate, all of that stuff. Now, to me, all animals can create stuff out of instinct. They can build dams, they can, build nests, they can raise kids, that all happens. What's special about us is the 13 billion year gift that the universe has given us, which is this prefrontal cortex, which doesn't exist in that form in many other species that we know about. That's our gift. And if we can use that gift well, hey, I'm talking here. If we can use that gift well.
Not hearing you.
If we can use that
We're
gift
not hearing
well.
you.
Is
It's
anybody
you,
else
Barry.
not hearing me?
No, it's you, Barry.
I'm hearing you.
I'm hearing
Okay.
you.
It's not me, it's you, Barry. That's what people are saying.
He can't hear us.
Okay, so I lost momentum here, but I'm trying to get it back on track, okay? Which is, if we don't use our prefrontal cortex, then we're wasting the gift that the universe has spent 13 billion years to create. And if we let our prefrontal cortex get sidetracked by the amygdala and its concerns and all the fears that it generates, then we're essentially abdicating the responsibility that and privilege that this prefrontal cortex is giving us. And then it would have been a way for that experiment on Earth of 13 billion years to produce nothing, okay? It'll have to be some other planet, some other species, someplace else, some other time that will use their prefrontal cortexes or that equivalent thereof in their species to create something, to go super deep and understand the nature of the existence, or to actually expand to become a Kardashev level 2 or level 3 or level 4 civilization. But it ain't gonna be us unless we learn how to tame our amygdalas, our fears, our difficulties, our egos, and really learn to use this gift. I'm trying to figure out how to do that. I'm trying to say, if we're going to use this gift, what it's able to do is to ideate, is to symbolize, to put symbols together to create new meaning. And if we learn to do that together, that'll be truly exciting. We can't do that until we learn how to manipulate these symbols together. Right now, the written page and streams of ASCII characters, that's a really poor way to do it. I want better ways to do it. I want things I can grab, put together, Lego blocks, different properties, sizes, colors, textures, whatever. I want that to be parts of ideas that I can assemble and co-create and merge and experiment with together with you or some subset of you. On the road towards that, we have to overcome a number of obstacles. Some are technological, some are psychological. We have to deal with all of that if that is the vision that we're going to, you know, create together. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm trying to look at, you know, how we interact, how we, you know, scale successful collaboration. That's why I ask the questions that I do. And that's always top of mind for me. So I'm not sure we are successful today in putting together specific proposals for how we manage an incident like what happened 2 weeks ago or whatever. That's just one small pebble that's an obstacle. There's many other pebbles and stones on the way before we can actually do this vision that I just tried to describe for us. And on the way towards that, we have to get rid of all these obstacles. And we have to figure out what works, what doesn't work. And that's why when I hear this phrase, we've done it here before, we've had this conversation before, we're just repeating ourselves. To me, that is so tiresome because it does not recognize that until we learn, yes, we will keep doing it again. And if you're saying that, you ain't learning it. I would rather focus on really understanding how to get to that vision. How do we co-create with ideas so that we are effective together? If I didn't have that as my vision, I wouldn't do any of this because I would just say, okay, fine, I'll just concentrate on my own. I have a firm belief that together we can do better. And that's why this time investment is important to me. Over. And out. Stacy.
Yeah.
I gotta
It's-
go, guys. Been
Bye,
awesome.
Glenn.
Thank you.
It's interesting that you bring that up. It's something I've been thinking a lot about. And, you know, this gift, there's a curse to it too. And it's tied in with power because what's different about us than other species is we're the only species that I know of that can hide our intent or that sometimes hides our intent. Animals don't pretend that they're doing something for a different reason. And I think that trust factor is a very big part of some of the challenges we face. So the reason it's important to get to know each other is because you're building up trust. But there's also power dynamics involved. And this is a way bigger conversation and a philosophical one that I would love to have.
May I respond to that?
Ping. Pong away.
The curse is a gift in disguise. Everything that we learn how to use, every insight we have in the universe can be used for good or bad. Same thing with the prefrontal cortex, can be used for good or bad. But to have it is a gift. To learn how to use it is the lesson. So if you don't, it's a curse. If you do, it's a gift. That's the way I look at it.
You had said something that I wanted to question you further on. In unblocking, you made the statement that you don't have to trust somebody to collaborate with them.
Yes.
I don't know if you want to elaborate on that, but I'm interested in knowing more because I totally don't feel that way at all. So I'm not sure we have a different definition in this case of what collaboration would mean. If it means coming to a group call like this, then yes, I agree. I don't have to trust everybody in this group. But does it mean something else to you?
Well, we've done ping pong, so am I allowed to go and respond
The
to
end
you?
of the show, we're done. People have checked out. We can do what we want.
That's your declaration, but I'll take acquiescence and silence as the same thing for now. Okay, so what I mean by that is somebody can ask me to go to the store, give me $10 and say, hey, bring me back 2 coffees. Okay, I don't need to know much about that person to actually agree and do that. So on the lower end, the non-significant, relatively inconsequential end, that is a form of collaboration. Now, if you move up the sophistication ladder, I may not trust somebody, but I may assign a 247-page contract, which quote unquote legally binds us. And then therefore they don't have to trust me. They don't have to, I don't have to trust them. But we know that if we break the bonds of that contract, some legal process is going to come and enforce the consequences. So that is a form of collaboration that does not require trust. And indeed, we've built an entire legal structure to essentially support working together / collaboration where there is no trust, where everybody is out for themselves. That's the way our economy has been structured, going all the way back to John Nash. I'm trying to figure out something different, but I'm not ignoring the fact that right now that does happen. We do collaborate with contracts, with small agreements here and there that have nothing to do with our, deep inner values or principles as people or as trustworthy beings. We've got these external, protocols and structures that penalize if we break contracts. That is a form of collaboration.
Okay, so creating something together is not necessarily what you mean by collaboration. Because
No,
when
you
you're
can't create.
sending some, no, I'm not saying that, but when you're sending somebody to the store to buy 2 cups of coffee, they're not helping you create something. They're doing what.
But let me give you another example. I can actually be on a team with 3 other people or 2 other people. I don't care if they're Republicans, but we're creating some software together. We could be doing that.
Okay, all right, but those are different things, and that's what I'm just trying to figure out. But you have to trust that they're not going to change your notes in the middle of the night or something like that. You still have to have some level of trust.
No, I don't. I can use GitHub, which basically makes everything transparent.
All right, but then you would use something else to ensure that you don't need the trust. I'm just trying to, to me, it's very different. If you put collaboration, meaning that you have interactions with people, that's one thing. But now, if you're talking about creating something, that's yeah, at least for me, I have to trust a person's integrity. Because no matter how skilled they are, if the integrity part's not there, it's not going to work for me. That doesn't mean that I can't ask them or pay them to get me a cup of coffee.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's ideal. I'm just saying that it happens all the time, every day.
Well, I
And
think that's a problem.
I'd like to see a new form of society that's not based on each of us as, just selfish, out for our own good, greedy people. Because I don't believe that most people are that. I believe that there are some people like that. And so society has been created to protect everybody from that small percentage. And so therefore we kind of assume everybody potentially could be that. And that's a really ugly way to live.
I know Josh has his hand up, but can I just ask Sam one more question, please? If you want to change that system, I would suggest that you have to care about integrity. Because if you're going to collaborate with somebody that has no integrity simply because they have the skill set, isn't that doing exactly what you're saying you don't want to do? You're willing
I agree
to
with
put
you
other.
1000%, Stacey, and I did interrupt
I'm waiting
you.
for a but. I'm waiting for a but.
No, I agree with you 1000%. That is why one of my most core ideas is the COI, about really, deciding what I want to do is good, holding myself accountable, and making sure I have people that hold me accountable to that. In one way, that could be viewed as integrity.
What about that hold themselves accountable?
Holding yourself accountable is a slippery slope. yes, you have to do that, but it's not sufficient.
Josh had his hand up.
Yeah,
In my
I'm
view.
just would love to add to this discussion because I think it's very relevant, very important. And the word that I bring up is a Buddhist term of Sangha, which is more than just saying the word community, we're communing, but we're actually integrally and integral. And that's what I hear Sam say when he says COI, is I'm not just holding myself accountable. I can only be myself, but I need an outside external force to see the things I cannot see to help me to hold. And to me, that's what that word Sangha means, or community at a higher level, where we are all in this together, not just me holding me accountable to me and my experience in life, but me interacting with you in a community. Whatever words you want to put into it is not as important as the value that's brought together versus the individual. And I say that with a deep feeling of being in a community of 9 million people living on an island in Manhattan, and then being in a small place with 3 people, which is me, my mom, my stepdad, on a mountain, and then them leaving and it's just me. I'm there for 4 months at a time by myself. So the only one that I can hold accountable is just me. I don't know if anyone has spent a great deal of time by themselves, but it really teaches you that you can only do so much within your own self. And to me, I find more value with other people, which is why I found all you guys with the GCC, is because I can only learn so much about myself by myself, but in reflection and in dialogue with each other, I learn more. I learn more about Sam's views of life I didn't know, and you, Stacy. And to me, it goes beyond trust, and it goes to intention of what you want to learn about yourself. And I'm not asking any of you guys to hold me responsible to me. I think that's something that I find a little bit hard to ask unless we got married, unless we all had a group communal wedding and we all made vows to each other and said, we will hold each other, to love each other, and to honor each other in sickness and health. And I did actually do a vow within myself with a guy named Alex Gray. He held a wedding where we married ourselves to our own souls. But I do think that that's what I hear you saying, Sam, is when you say let's make agreements, is some sort of vow to each other to stand up something together. And it's from the smallest transaction of just $1 or $2 to buy a cup of coffee. That's a vow that if I ask for a cup of coffee, that I'm going to give a promissory note to you that you can go take to another place that will honor that vow and put that into a ledger in my bank account. And those transactions are ephemeral, and they're not as strong to me as the spiritual transaction of the word. And the reason I'm bringing this up is I just was talking to Cusella, and she was saying when she was in communal group talk in the Philippines with tribal leaders, a lawyer from America was there. And he said, any contract you make is not going to work because he's a lawyer. He knows that it's only the enforcement of the contract, but the word and the spiritual vow to each other with your word being your bond is so much more powerful, because I could break, like say I was Donald Trump and I break my word, but my lawyers enforce it, because that's often what some people do, is they'll say they're going to do something, not do it, but hold someone up in the court of enforcement, of law. And you never get to the end result where they broke their word because they're in litigation talking about it. That's what I mean, Sam, when I say we've talked about it. I think it's so important to talk about it to get to that place. But if it's holding up the end result of, do we love, know, like, and trust each other? That to me is the place I want to get to. And if I'll finish real quick, Stacey, I promise. If I say, Stacey, I need your help, and I call you, and I know within a day or two you'll call me back, to me that is the bond, that is the trust, that's the friendship, and if you say, you know what, Josh, I don't like you, I don't want to call you back, then I know that, and then that's a good bond too. That's your word, and you're being honest about that. And to me, those connections are the real solid connections of being a human being on this planet. And I have family members that I don't talk to, like my brother. We're not that close right now, but I do have a bond with him of him being my brother. I know if something really came up that was important, he would be there and vice versa. But on the day-to-day, I can't call him for anything, and vice versa. And he just gave me a crib for the baby that's coming. So it's not like he hates me or anything. We just don't live integral lives. We don't have the same value system at the moment, but he's still my brother. And that's how I feel about everyone here in the room. Is I don't see things exactly like Alex. I don't see it like Colin or Barry. But if I call it Barry at 3 a.m. and we have an amazing conversation, that's incredible. And that we have that bond, and vice versa. I've had great conversations with everyone, both here and outside of here. And that's, to me, that is the community of impact. And with that, I'm complete.
Yes, so what, yeah, so there's a larger community and then it's your inner circle. And for me, what you said that was most important had to do with the word. Because when I'm at least picking my inner circle, the most important thing is not if they're there for me at 3 a.m, they might have something else to do, but that I can trust that they will tell me the truth if I ask them a question. Or they will say, I don't want to answer that question. I'm okay with that. But be honest with what I'm asking you. That, and to me, that's not negotiable. I might still be in somebody's community, but I will always have in my mind, that is not somebody I can count on, nor should I, because it's just something that I won't do. And Barry and I have had this conversation so many times about integrity and ethics and being honest. And Sam posted something today. It was a quote about something about respecting people that tell you the truth. And the only thing I added is if asked, because it's one thing to ask somebody and to listen to their answer, and hopefully you're asking somebody that is going to be truthful. It's another for somebody to offer you what they think you should know. I really, spiritually, I believe that you should wait to be asked before you answer. But if you're going to answer, say the truth or say nothing. Colin, you're muted.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I agree with, if you're asked a question, don't lie. We don't know if we've ever had the conclusion of that conversation. But yeah, that you would expect people not to lie to you and manipulate you, unless the politics. Sometimes Sam mentioned a long time ago, there's 4 kinds of stake that people can have. I think stakes, whether you have personal stakes or whether you have financial stakes. I can't remember all. You mentioned 4 different stakes, 4 different kinds of stakes. Maybe it wasn't a formal division of stake. You don't remember that? Okay, well, that'd be interesting to go back and search for that. But I do believe the intentions are linked to your values and what you have at stake. How much time does each person have to offer to this group, for example? And what is this group? And, Josh is saying, well, you do what you do and you bring it here and hopefully it's useful for people. Like, what do you mean? This, for some people who don't have a full-time gig, or, that takes a lot of hours a day. Somebody who's doing heavy family responsibility with, so everybody here has a different starting point, perhaps a different set of values. And just to assume everybody's going to, tell you the truth is, I think, a base, but also being asked for your opinion is very important. That's the consent part. I assume we're here talking in this group, you're bringing it to the forum, unless you say, I would just like in a telenola where I'd like to just get this off my chest and I don't really need a response. That's a different conversation. So we don't really have any, like Sam says, any guidelines, who goes first? Do we wait 10 seconds after somebody says something very important? It would be nice if we could find these things so that we can have long, thoughtful, emotional conversations to look inwards in a telenola kind of way, which I'm not as interested in. I'm too private for that kind of stuff, but I might try it. I'd also like conversations where the truth matters more. So in reading Sapiens recently, this is the 5th time I've mentioned this, I think, in this group, the perspective of truth over story has changed for me. Humans care more about the story and their comfort with it than they do about the truth. It come to find out. Like, duh, how stupid am I? I grew up thinking that if I followed the truth, I'd be respected. Well, that's not the case. So it takes not only the truth, but social skills, soft skills, channeling, putting up with people, and forgiving people for blowing up at you. That's, you know, if you want to keep a grudge with somebody, that's the best way to not get ahead, right? Like, was the stake even important? I feel that the blow up was, to me, wasted emotion. There's got to be something way more important to save that emotion for. I also find it manipulative because, you know, somebody could be under a lot of stress and that could affect their physical health. Like when Doug blew up at me recently, he wanted me to acknowledge that I was that much of a pain in the ass to him or whatever. And he asked me if I realized what I was doing to him. And I said, well, look, I'm sorry you feel that way, but it's not my responsibility how you take my information, my questions. If you feel like such a heavy identity and being challenged, sorry you feel that way. So are we in a public forum where we're challenging each other, pointing at exactly what the truth is that matters scientifically, or are we just trying to support people emotionally as in our inner journey to find their inner truth, to be the best person they can be? To figure out that those two things are happening is the yin yang, yes. And it is the magic of the GCC that people care about both of those things. And bringing engineering and graphs and models first is probably not right. You got to understand what the problem is first. So, and I think the problem is people having the right listening skills and respect in this forum. And I think learning those valuable communication skills we can share with each other as opposed to picking on each other. And Sam does that with me, and I appreciate it. And others as well. So long talking is one of them. I think the buzzer already went off. So here I am. Yeah, okay, well, you know what? I've said enough. If you don't know what I'm talking about by now, you know what I'm saying? So are we looking for the truth in a conversation, or are we looking for compassion? Different conversations, different aims. The human race is looking for compassion. They're not looking for the truth. That's what scientists are for.
Oh, that's a whole conversation in
Yeah, no,
itself.
that's what scientists are for. They'll figure it out. That's what nuclear weapons are for. They'll figure it out. But no, I'm here for the conversation about science and nuclear weapons, and it's not a friendly one. And it's wrapped in identity politics, and it's wrapped in stories over truth and myths over truths, and the woo to kill us all. Like, you know, I don't know, but I think we should be able to challenge these things. And if it's something really important to somebody, like spiritual, what is it for Josh? It's a geometry, sacred geometry. I respect that in Josh, and I'm curious about that. And as Stacy said, you know, what could I ask Josh more about? You know, those are some of the things, like how that matters to him. And if it's just to make him a kinder person and ground him more, then those are valuable things. But in this space, I find it's a challenge to go between empathy and truth. And I think if we channeled better conversations, people wouldn't feel like going to level 14. It would be addressed. And if they do, it would be nice if we had a way to actually ask them, okay, let's hold stop. Why is this so important? Let's not move on. That was because it was extreme. And when it happened, it really shocked me. And I think it was personally unacceptable, and it made me and many other people uncomfortable. And that's why we're here today. How do we do ourselves better? So I think we're all talking about what we want. When we had the conversation on spirituality versus science, the first thing I proposed is that we talk about something else, plan B, because I didn't know if we could respect the conversation or if this was the right forum. Anyway, continue on.
Kayla was next.
That's what I was raising my hand to signal.
I had a feeling. She's not there on my screen for you, though. She's there.
I see her. She's there. Hello,
She's there.
I was gonna say, Josh, it's a shame that you know, that lawyer had to be there at Crusoe's tribal talking with the tribal people. And it's only because a lot of the tribal communities and the ancient communities, they really, their word was really their bond, you know, and it was something that they revered. And if you said something, that meant it, that was the contract. And it's just kind of a shame how now in the modern world, we have to have something like that. We have to have a contract, and then the judicial system, you know, which has lots of potholes. But if everybody, you know, takes responsibility for their word and how they, you know, communicate, it would eliminate so many problems, in my opinion. And I also wanted to say, I would not give $2 to just anybody to deliver my coffee. I'm that kind of a person. You know, if they're, you know, pieces of shit, I wouldn't do it. I don't go back to establishments where they have awful people. I don't support it in any way, shape, or form. Anyways, that's it.
But you wouldn't be mad at Sam if he did. You'd be okay with Sam doing it.
No way.
Well,
No way.
Can I just bring up one thing is when we're at each other's houses, we don't transact with money. We just say, hey, would you like a cup of coffee? And then they give it to you. And then we all share with each other when we're at each other's houses. And that's a whole nother system that we haven't moved towards. I think that's something where we don't even need to keep accountability of a ledger of it just happens, but that's a lot of trust. That's a communal group. You know, we have that with our friend circles, our inner, and we expand those circles out with more people that we give just because we give. We're not expecting anything back. And if it does come back, we're hopefully building friendships and bonds in those. Like my sister always says, you've got money in the friendship bank with me. You know, she always says that the friendship bank is full. Like you're adding more to the friendship bank, and then she wants to give more back to them because she's keeping her own heart space of what was given to her out of love and respect.
So here's why I think this conversation of compassion versus truth is so important not to have, you know, I don't want to necessarily have it here. But for example, if Colin were to ask you about sacred geometry because he knows it's of interest to you, that's fine if he genuinely wants to know about it. But if he doesn't and he thinks he's doing it to be compassionate, I feel very strongly eventually it will backfire. We would be much better off if we were honest first with ourselves and then with the other people, because otherwise we're pulling ourselves. And yeah, if we're friends with somebody or we like somebody, we're going to stretch ourselves further. But why should we be needing to? It shouldn't be the case. And so again, what some people think is compassionate, that leads them to tell a lie, I stand firmly, that is not compassionate. The intent might be there, but it's not going to play out that way.
What constitutes a lie is the problem. Holding back, is that a lie? Lie to yourself?
That might be a more acceptable lie. Better to say, you know, I don't want to, again, I think the least amount is better. So better to say, you know, I'm not the right one to ask, or I really, you know, whatever it is you have to do. I'm not saying you have to be perfect. I'm not saying I never lie to myself. I'm not saying I never lie to a telemarketer. Sorry, I'm on my way out the door. But I'm just saying I have an ideal. I have an ideal and I try to grow in that every day and match it as much as I can, to be honest, first with myself. That's the most important.
Well, I think relevant to this meeting today is the conversation I was having with Glenn, and it has all the components. You know, Glenn was interested in something like sacred geometry, but for Glenn, it's something else. It seems to be his passion. I'm not asking him because I want to tell him he's wrong. I'm asking him because I want to understand better, and I think he respects that. So he's willing to be open, and it feels like a friendly conversation, as opposed to somebody who thinks I'm a militant atheist trying to prove there's no soul, which is a different conversation. So with Glenn, I really appreciate that. And there's still more. And I think what I see as a benefit in this conversation is to get to why Glenn wants to use this Lego to build something. What's the something you're trying to build with this Lego, Glenn? Because the Lego might be something I'm saying, well, I don't recognize that Lego. And he said, well, use whatever Lego you want. It doesn't matter. This is the point. And if you can do anything to help me get here, then bring that Lego. This is the Lego I know how to describe, which is, again, caught in semantics. So if we can get past the semantics of what the superstructure is, or whether it is actually connected to a conscious being, or as Sam says, discover the internal answers to, you know, many difficult questions. I don't know if that includes the principles of mathematics for Sam, if that includes everything is possible for Sam. I don't think he thinks everything is possible. I don't know. But does it matter? With Glenn, it seems to really, really matter. So so in that conversation, there is a truth to get to, or is it just opinion and a project? So when I said, Glenn, do you know that's true? And he goes, well, actually, I don't know that that's true. And then I said, okay, well, then we're getting somewheres. But when I talk to other people and they say, oh, no, that's true, and you're an idiot, that's a different conversation. That's a debate at that point. And, you have to back away from that and say, is it important? Is it in context? Is there a way that we can not yell and still get our point across? And especially if somebody's yelling, it must be important to them. I suspect the yelling in this regard was not about the actual material at hand, but tactics to, I don't know if it's trying, I feel that there was hidden agendas in this drama. And I've asked about it and didn't get any answers, but it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter to me in the end, as long as it doesn't keep happening to cause trouble and disturbance in the flow of me trying to understand Glenn or somebody else. And in that context, people are, Stacy or Barry or anybody say, look, Glenn and Colin, you talk about this a lot. Why don't you take it offline? And me and Glenn would say, yeah, why don't we? Because it wasn't that long of a conversation. In fact, I probably talk longer right now than me and Glenn talk. So anyway, I'll end it with that.
Bottom line though is I'll be brief. When you're talking to Glenn, there is a genuine interest. So that's the kind of positive type conversation to have, where you have a genuine interest. That's all I'm saying when I'm talking about being compassionate. Don't engage in a long conversation out of kindness. If that's your only motivation, or anybody's only motivation is to appear kind, in the long run, it's not really kind.
I think it's how far you take it, and I think it's very good to be interested in other people's interests, whether you're interested in it.
What about if you're not? So if you're not, okay, I'm not going to keep ping pong.
If you were a fisherman, Stacy, right, and you needed some help to get on your fishing trip, I would ask you questions like, what do you need? Like, okay, is there something I can help you with? Can you use this?
Would you do that? Would you do that because you want to appear to be a good person, or would you do that for a different reason?
I'm doing that because I'm empathetic towards the fact that you're getting enjoyment out of it, and I get enjoyment from your enjoyment. And I think that's,
and if that's genuine, then I say that's great.
That's
and sometimes it's genuine, right? And what?
That's the desiderata. Everyone has their story, even the dull and ignorant, right?
Some people have a harder time seeing themselves in what they consider negative. Like some people have trouble expressing anger because they think anger's bad. I don't want to be bad. That's when you start lying to oneself, because you have to come up with excuses or whatever. You know what? Sometimes I'm a bitch. I own that. I try to be better. I don't always want to be that. It happens. I'm human. I forgive myself. Hopefully others will forgive me.
But do people know why you're triggered? Because
It may or may not matter.
it may or may not, but I'm thinking that when you do get triggered, you're pretty clear on people know why, in my experience.
I am, but I've really worked at this, like a long time. I've really, really worked at it. And it's
Well,
not easy.
I think as a group, we should do that. Right? Like as a group, if somebody goes to 14 or 12 or tries to, 18.5 square root 8, doesn't really matter. It's the effect on the group and what are we to do about it? Like, what are the suggestions? And my suggestion is that I think what Doug says, right at that point, it's like the conversation stops. That person's crying out for help of some sort, unless they're playing some kind of drama game, which I think is unacceptable in this forum. Now, I may be wrong. They can make their case. I'm not here to say that science can't go on, but I definitely find that there are some, what I would consider unacceptable opinions from somebody who thinks that we can get together and coexist as a group here and treat other people with that kind of language and that kind of intent, especially when we've got all the time in the world to clear up misunderstandings. To claim somebody's coming up with some theory of mind that is wrong and I must attack them is childish. It should be, I think your theory of mind is wrong because of these reasons. And it's just not acceptable, I don't think, in the group that we have. And anybody who thinks that those outbursts are acceptable have a lot of explaining to do. And I'm not hearing it, Sam's not hearing it. Are you hearing it?
Well, here's the thing. Everybody will have to make up their own minds. I mean, I've said this to Barry and I've said it to you both at different times. And I don't know that, I guess I am saying it publicly now, but I saw very big similarities between the both of you. And I know I've said it to both of you and you both gave me the same reaction, which was, no, can't be.
No,
But
I've agreed with that. But
I stand by that.
Yeah, but I think we might both look like a cake, but one of us is a ice cake and the other one's as a hot cake. Like, I'm telling you, you couldn't be any different. But yes, we have a lot of similarities.
The point that I wanted to make is, for me personally, I trust both of you. I trust both of you that if I ask you something about me, that you will tell me the truth. That's what's important to me. Does that mean that you should each be able to trust each other? No, it should not. Every relationship is different. And so people watching, they get to look at all of us or whoever, and they get to decide what works for them, what doesn't work for them. And that's fine. I don't have to convince somebody else to think about Barry or to think about you the way I think about you, because it's not going to be the same.
Okay, what I would like for a takeaway is a tool. Like Sam says, he can use tools to implement trust and make the space more effective. So what tools can we implement or tool or signal when somebody gets angered, that appears angry to everybody else, whether it's good acting or not, I don't know. What do? Do we accept it? Or do we do like Doug and try to find out why that person is needing attention?
That's a whole nother conversation, but Sam's not here and I'm wondering, is that because he's bored? Because Sam, is there a reason you're not here?
Well, he's probably eating breakfast, but the thing is, I think we should have that conversation and we should know what to do. And we should be bigger than that, realizing it's going to derail. Like, what was the intended effect? Was it for me to understand something or for me to get fed up and leave?
But Colin, see, okay, I'm going to just move aside to something else. You said something before. You said, I've mentioned sapience for the 5th time now. And I wanted to ask you, So why have you mentioned it 5 times? And because I sense that there was some sort of disappointment in your voice that you keep mentioning it, but that there's no conversation about it. Is that accurate?
No, it's because it's a paradigm shift in my thinking that facts matter more than story.
No, but I mean, in terms of the statement that you've mentioned it 5 times, is there a
Because
reason?
I think it bears repeating that stories matter more than fact. You want the truth or do you want the story?
Okay, so what I would just say is that there's a time and a place for stories. And again, this goes back to what I was saying about, you know, what may or may not be compassionate. There may be a time that I want to hear your story of what happened, you know, maybe with you and Barry. But there may be a time like on a call like this that I don't or others don't. So part of that, and that's what we started off talking
The
about.
stories I'm talking about, but those ones count too. They're gossip, but the story, and they're fundamental to our cognitive revolution and the reason why. But what I'm talking about is stories as myths and global challenges, but people coming around the myth, like Kayla said, perfect example. Their word was their guarantee. It didn't matter if the deity was watching or not. It was their word. Now, the deity might have been important for both of them, but it was the word, the agreement between them, that was the thing that they were wanting to trust. So that's their whole mythology might be around that. I don't know. And that's how we've got to where we are in larger groups, stories. Like that's what Sapiens tells us, which means that I could go out and start telling people facts. Who cares? The scientists do it with global warming. There's your example, right? Who cares?
The point is that in all these calls, the more we've gotten to know each other and the more we've heard each other speak, I know for me, that's helped me form my opinions of whose word I trust. How else do you form those opinions unless you're interacting with these people?
Well, I think we're at one level. We have to have trust as commoners, serfs in the village and working within the GCC village. But there's actually an upper level of knowledge. And I think the agnotology speaks very well to it. I think I'm an agnotologist, an armchair agnotologist, perhaps. And it's, if somebody wants to give a story or a myth for empathy reasons, to help somebody from feeling like they're suicidal or something, that's great. If you want to tell somebody something, okay, it's okay, calm down, don't have a heart attack, it's okay. But later when you're talking to your friends, you're going to say something like, that guy was so freaked out, I was worried he's going to have a heart attack. I couldn't say anything. Or do we realize that it's, you know, Klaus Meagher? He's said over and over again, it's the few elite that are controlling all the little farmers. Doesn't matter what the little farmers think or trust of each other. You know, so the question is, how does it matter and effective in the larger conversation? Are we having an individual conversations or are we having a group conversation? Is it about global challenges? Is it about inner self-help? Pick a day, it's about something different. So on the day when it's about inner self-help, I think the stories are going to help more than my facts. Like maybe there's some facts, but cold hard facts don't really do it. But when it comes to measuring something because you need to cut it or sell it or whatever, then you do need to have trust that nobody's screwing with the weights and measures, right? So that's what the technology can do for Sam to keep him from having to trust somebody. If the crypto can do a mathematical to say that, you know, those bits and bytes are the way I left them. Oh, wait, somebody changed these bits and bytes. Let's restore them to what they were. And that's what Wikipedia does.
I don't know if Barry can still hear us, but I wanted to say, can you hear us, Barry?
Yeah, I finally
Can we let him?
reconnect. I finally reconnected the power supply to my speakers.
You're quite the tech.
Did you want to add some? It's been mostly me and Colin just talking.
I know I had the headphones on because my bookshelf speakers had lost the AC power. I had to plug it back in. I don't really have a whole lot to contribute to what you two guys are talking about. I didn't do a checkout, and maybe it's a little late because there's almost nobody left here, but about 2 or 3 weeks ago, before Sam initiated this 3-session discussion, we were talking about he was talking about setting aside 1 or 2 Saturdays a month for presentations, as opposed to the usual barn raising theme. And Stacy, I'm pretty sure you recall that you nominated one that I could do that you were interested in. And that was the one that you had already written one medium.com article about, which was a little bit about the drama theory or dramaturgy. And you had suggested that there might be interest for me to pick one Saturday out of the month to go a little deeper into presenting dramaturgy. Now, for all I know, you may be the only one here that's interested, but I suspect maybe at least half of the people would find that, worth attending. And if there's 1 or 2 people who could care less about dramaturgy, they don't have to attend. There's no obligation to listen to me if they're not interested. And that sort of ties into what Glenn said about changing topics. Sam hinted at a new topic thread. And one of the ideas is that, and this is not a new idea, that, maybe once a month, somebody presents something where they have some depth that may be of interest to other people, rather than, sort of rehash the same stuff that people have been hashing over, for at least the 8 months that I've been here. It does get boring and repetitive, and feels like we're not it's non-convergent, we're not getting anywhere. So what's the point? However, I will point out that there is the reason that drama exists in our culture, not only because simply it happens, but because it's also one of the most powerful educational mechanisms that exist in the culture. And my observation, being an academic, is that if you present an academic material that's abstract and theoretical, you're lucky if 5% of the public will sit through it. But if you tell a really good story, and Neil Gaiman is sort of the world's expert on this, you can get 99% of the population to be on the edge of their seats attending to a really well-told story, even though it's fictional. Because this is something that I learned a long time ago. Fiction is a great scam. You get to tell the truth while pretending to lie. And the great storytellers have exploited that observation. If you want to tell the truth, the most effective way to get people to listen to the truth is to embed it inside of a well-told story. Even though the characters in the story and the plot of the story is totally made up, the truth is snuck into the story, and you'll get farther reaching people than if you'll simply come out and give them, the telegram bottom line. So there's some reason to have appreciation for dramaturgy and drama theory and why it exists in our culture. And I think, spending maybe 1 hour on a Saturday might be worth it to the population here.
Well, what I'm most interested in is doing that in a participatory way.
Yep, I agree.
And even, even with like that hidden, I've been thinking a lot about these things, but even something like, the hidden truth within the story.
Right.
There's often many hidden truths within the story.
Absolutely.
And instead of arguing like, oh, it means this, what about if our mindset would be, how many possibilities can we come up with for what this means or what the lesson is here?
Right.
And I think, even something like Cinderella, I remember being in college and having a lot of my mentors really annoyed at the bad messages within fairy tales. But for me, they were really positive. Cinderella had positive messages for me. My imagination in my own little corner, I can be whatever I want to be. I would love people like to be the same way you can tell a story and engage people. If you engage them, even in the smallest of way, raising their hands, anything, it also adds to that. And if I could just share one more thing, and I wish Sam were here, because I went to a Zoom call and it was Unlikely Conversations. Part of why I went is I saw Sam had liked it too. So I figured, all right, let me go check it out. And I'm interested if he actually did like it, or if it's something that I've seen Facebook do before, which is to attribute emojis to other people. But anyway, I went there because I was very excited at what it appeared they were trying to do, which was to build connection by hearing stories. And I was very disappointed because the execution, in my opinion, was lacking, and I had no place to give that feedback. So I went out into a breakout room with people where we had 2 minutes, and just at the point where we'd want to connect, we weren't given that opportunity. Instead, we were brought back and then told what to do and how to think. And again, it was somebody helping us to navigate. When I come to a space, I want to take something from it, but I also want to be able to give something.
Right,
And I want that opportunity to do both.
right. And you know, I'm probably the oldest person here. I'm 76. I'm at the end of I'm retired already, at the end of my career. And before I die, I want to give back everything that I've accumulated in my lifetime that other people would find of value. Now, I don't know necessarily what other people will find of value, but it doesn't take me any good to take it to my grave. So my need and my desire is in my last decade here, where I still have some ability to participate, is to give away whatever I've acquired that other people would like to have.
And that's the trick. The trick is finding the people that want what you have.
Right. Now, sometimes they come to me. I've had people come to me and demonstrate a desire for something that they want from me. And sometimes it's legitimate and on the up and up, and sometimes it's a scam. Sometimes they come with false pretenses. And I don't always know. Typically right away, I have no idea. I take people at face value. But from time to time, people have come to me expressing an interest and a desire. And when I deliver it, it turns out they didn't want that after all. They came for another reason. They had an agenda. And then I've got, okay, now I got a puzzle, and I got a mystery, now I got an enigma. Why did this person come to me in the first place? What do they really want? And sometimes I figure it out. Sometimes it takes me 8 months to figure it out, or even a year. And sometimes I never figure it out.
And sometimes maybe they just thought they were being kind by expressing an interest.
Right.
And so I say that that's not always kind.
If it was disingenuous, then I would rather know why somebody came to me legitimately. And then I can say, yes, I can provide some information to you that speaks to what you really want, or no, that's beyond my pay grade. That's beyond my ken. And I don't always, if somebody comes to me with a disingenuous ask, then I'm in left field.
Well, I would say, and I'll let you go, Colin, but I just want to say, when that happens, that's when I think you should check in and say, do I feel like giving an answer or don't I? You don't have to do anything. It's your choice.
Until I figure out that something's fishy. Takes me a while to figure out that something's fishy. I tend to take people at face value, where most other people would say, there's a red flag here. I'm sort of the last person to figure out something's fishy.
Well, that's why I say you should do what you feel you want to do. And I'll throw it to Colin.
Yeah, no, this is very good. I think I have an example where I would like to know what Barry was doing, and Barry has an example where he would like to know what I was doing. And I think if you're in a conversation with somebody and it's not working, you should reassess really quickly what it is that they do want and not just assume what they need. And I felt that was the big problem I had with you, Barry, is you had, not that it was wrong, but it just didn't fit what I needed at the time. I didn't be analyzed to find my boundaries of where I could be helped. The first thing, I didn't need you to go through that process and guide me through that, which is a valuable process for somebody who needs that. And maybe I do, I don't know. It just wasn't something, it wasn't my ask, first of all. It was just the way you went about grabbing your hammer. Go ahead, Stacy.
I don't want to be rude, but I don't want to engage in this conversation anymore. So I have to go and get dressed anyway.
Yeah, I don't want
Okay.
to engage in this
It's been really
conversation
good.
either, because it's a stressful conversation for me, and I don't want to be stressed.
I
Yeah.
don't blame you. So my message to you would be that when we met, I wanted to do a joint thing where you could see where it is I liked what you had to offer and why I was excited to ask you about psychology with relation to my journey map. But
See,
we went through a
perplexed me
long,
perplexed me because after you expressed an interest in knowing more about the theory of emotions and learning, the conversation diverted away from that. And I go, he's not,
right,
is he interested or not? He said
Right.
he's interested, and then he comes back a week later and he doesn't
Yeah.
seem to have any interest in it anymore all of a sudden. Let's talk about something else. And I thought, what is this
Yeah.
about?
Yeah, no, I can appreciate that. And I think that is the point where the lessons are to be learned here. I don't think either one of us had a bad intent. I just think it wasn't understood what the intents were. And
Didn't understand what your intent was. I still don't.
yeah, well, the thing was, is I felt like when I was trying to ask you, I had to take a preliminary set of questions from you, of you trying to get your bearings on what it is that I actually know, so you could figure out how to help me.
Sure, I needed to figure out what level I can talk to you that is at your level. Do I talk to you
Right.
at the graduate level? Do I talk to you at the high school level? I need to know what level that I can communicate with you where you can understand what I'm talking about. I'm not over your head and I'm not under your head. I didn't know that
Right.
because you were a total stranger. You were a total
No,
stranger.
I appreciate that. What I'm saying, for me, your method of going about that was very lengthy, and it made it so that I couldn't course correct to what I actually wanted, because I'm assuming that you were assuming what I needed.
wasn't assuming. I couldn't find out what you needed or what
Well, what I needed was to be assessed first by you, and that isn't what I needed. I needed to be,
assessed in what dimension? What did you
well,
want me to
holy
assess?
cow, we went into electromagnetics because you knew I was an EE grad.
Yeah, I
we went
wanted to
into-
see if I could use analogies that I could explain something outside of EE by using an analogy from something you already knew in EE, but I wanted to make sure that I was going to have a basis for the analogy that you already had well in hand. That's what I was asking. I want to find out how much EE did you have?
Yeah,
So I could
appreciate
use
that.
any of it as a basis for an analogy.
Right, I appreciate that. Now, the way I would approach that, or the way that I would feel more comfortable, is for you to realize that I wasn't trying. What I was presented with was an academic, almost an enrollment into unpacking what it was I was interested in. You had a
Yes.
great presentation, and in order for you to unpack it for me any further, you felt you needed to go through certain courses to deliver that information to me.
I got to find out
But
what
I don't-
level I can talk to you at. That's all.
Right, but I don't think I really wanted that information as a course lecture package. What I wanted was for you to listen to me explain what it is I need without you probing.
I didn't understand what you were talking about. When you
Then you should have
spoke,
asked again, or
Yeah,
did
when
what
I-
Stacy said.
when you spoke, I had the same problem that Kayla and Tyra expressed, and also that Sam has expressed, that I can listen to the words and I go, I can't even diagram a frickin' sentence and get a predicate that I can understand what it says. I get a whole bunch of terms. I get a whole bunch of vocabulary terms, some of which I recognize, some of which I don't
That's what
recognize,
steelman.
but I don't know what they mean.
That's what steel manning is about. And you also have admitted that you have naturally a problem listening, as you know, we went through that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I've said that for 20
Yeah.
years, that I can listen to one paragraph and then see if I can figure out what that paragraph said, and that might take me 30 minutes.
right, and I'm saying that you overanalyze so much that we can't collaborate.
Oh, I agree. We cannot collaborate.
Because
I mean,
for
you-
me,
you-
the reason why is because you overanalyze and you're not listening to what the other person is actually
I
needing.
can't listen as fast as people talk. Simply can't.
You can-
People talk 10 times faster than I can listen. When I looked at that video, you requested I look at a video between Sam Harris and Deepak Chopra. I took 15 minutes to analyze one sentence.
I know.
15
That
minutes
was painful.
because there was a lot of content in those sentences, and I had to stop and play back those sentences and write them down and diagram the sentences. And after 15 minutes, I could figure out the meaning of one sentence.
Right. And that's great. But again, that's wrapping an academic analysis around a certain archaeology, almost archaeology, type of look at what
I'm an
happened.
academic. That's who I am.
I know. I appreciate that. Just a second, Stacy. I see your hand. And in essence, I was just having a general conversation about the interpretations, and then theory of mind came into it, and then we fell off. But
Interpretations
I
is somebody says a paragraph that's very abstract, graduate level thesis.
I know.
And I'm
But do you
going to
remember what
spend
my question
15
was?
minutes trying to understand what that one paragraph said.
Right. And I don't know if anybody really understands what Deepak was saying, but the fact of the matter is that wasn't what the question was. Do you remember what the question was? And let Stacy go. Sorry, Stacy.
I was just going to say, the most important thing I heard is that you both recognize that you can't collaborate with each other.
Yes.
And I think, and there's nothing wrong with that. You have different styles. They don't mesh well.
Yes.
That doesn't mean that you can't be in the same community, because as Sam pointed out, he can, even though you can't collaborate with each other, that doesn't mean that if somebody brings some birthday cake to the table, you can't have a slice of it. You can still be in the room. And that's where I think you should leave it. It's not about, because it's not about trying to change people.
I'm not going to change. I'm 76. I don't know if Colin's going to change. He's younger than I am. He's got some growth left in his life, but I am not going to be the agent that, in fact, Colin has said more than one occasion to me, he says, "You are not my teacher." Now, I don't know who is his teacher, maybe Sam, maybe nobody, maybe he learns independently. But what I do know that whatever it is he wants to learn, and I don't know what it is, I know that he does not want to learn anything from me because he said so multiple times.
But that
No,
being
that's not true. That's not true.
Stop. Why? It is true. But whether it's true or not, you have different styles. You both acknowledge that you probably would not be the best in collaborating. That doesn't mean that you both can't sing me happy birthday on my birthday and be collaborating in that way.
There's more of a nuance to that. Barry doesn't want half-cooked
I'm
ideas.
tired of this conversation, and it's
But
funny.
Barry doesn't want half-cooked ideas. He wants it already analyzed, or he's going to analyze it himself before he joins into the conversation.
But why is it necessary for you to explain Barry to me? I get along fine with Barry. I don't need to.
Yeah, but you're probably not talking about the same stuff, first of all. And second of all, the thing is, seriously.
Stacy initiated that conversation 7 hours earlier.
I don't know what you guys are talking about.
Stacy initiated that conversation.
What I'm saying is if I thought I could collaborate with Barry, it would have to be in a much different way than I approached it the first time. I know that if I needed an opinion on something that Barry knows about, I know I could come and ask Barry, because I would put it very specific. I wouldn't give it so general that he had to analyze it. Like, who are you in my class? And let me figure out what you know. Like, that was way too much for me, way too much. I didn't consent to any of that. I just wanted him to have a look at my journey map and see if we could talk about how emotions could help people in the Doug space, and how doing things with the dynamic repository and emotions could help people in the SAM space, and how when people go around enough time and start to align with each other, they can go up into the higher space of collaboration, and what emotions are around that higher commitment space. Like, what does Kayla need to get a coffee?
And you found out you couldn't. So let's see what Heiner wants you to say.
Was Heiner here?
Yeah.
Yes, I was in, sorry, I was in other 2 sessions beside, which were important. Yours is interesting. I'm very surprised that you're still around, so you have some stamina. I was even more surprised when I just entered, that I saw you laughing. I mean, that's already on the emotional scale, quite a good step. And I must say, you are absolutely incompatible, even incomparable. And the way you talk, Colin, is sometimes really too tough for me. You see, I never talk about how Barry sees something. I always talk about me, myself. And this very strong words like, you know, and you feel, and you don't like this teacher or so, this is all something we should leave behind. We should try to confront our blind spots, what we don't want to talk about, because this might be the hot stuff where we can learn, because this is maybe burning and hurting. And in such an environment, I mean, you would never normally meet because you are in different parts of town and different disciplines with different interests. And as we don't know each other's circumstances, normally, if I wouldn't have a fable for the etymology, the old meaning of other cultures, maybe I wouldn't have started to talk with Barry at all. Only Stacy connected us.
Right.
And then it comes that you learn what is his providence, his knowledge, his roots. And then sometimes I have learned to step back and to be silent. And I know it from many cultures. They would never talk about themselves and their feeling or how they think other people are thinking. You have been and you have learned in the 2-3 years I know you now, you have been coming down, but you've been also easily being antagonized and fighting with Jaswinder or whatever and emotions. And this is something I must say I don't like. Why don't you breathe in and out and be silent? I do not hate, do not like hate conversations. I've been in really 17 nation fight situations where they killed each other, where it was really about money and development. So I'm very sensitive to languaging. And when you feel hurt or rebuffed, pushed back by Barry, because Barry has a different culture and a different style, then I think you maybe just call it a day. And Barry is the same. Barry, I will never understand, like here for hours, that you are standing this through for 8 hours. I mean, this is a pain. Why are you doing this? I mean, I understand that we all have our personal problems and situations, and especially between men and women in a marriage. They live together for 30 years and don't understand each other. So how can we understand each other when this guy is always speaking about the etymology and you speak about networks, and everybody is blaming the other if he is opaque or obsolete or whatever? I mean, how can you say someone is obsolete? You excused it when I asked you last time. You said, no, I only meant his Apache system also. But that is not true. I checked it out. Then you said, well, this is old guy. Heine can listen to him. So please be a little bit more restrictive. And this is my thing I wanted to tell you in person, but now we say it in a group. Please, we all can learn so much. Why do we always have to go in agitation and use terms nobody else understands? Forget all the jargon you use, all the dirty or whatever words, but I have to stop now because I must say, without you having used in front of me, like your picture, and you're speaking just from the backstage without image, I cannot understand you. 90% or 60% is non-verbal. And so this communication through Zoom is a nightmare. If you don't have somewhere a common grid, a common pattern, you can only use time. Sorry, I wanted to ravel this off. We had these discussions many times with Gertrude and Tammy and Harry when we met here in Germany. It was very helpful about styles and attitudes, and it's always the same plaster. In our Magic Roundtable says 2 ears and 1 mouth. And some people say God has given it to them, and others don't like to speak about God, about religion. But we should all leave this beside. And I really wanted to get this off. I don't want you to react. I just have to leave. But I just wanted to tell you, I heard you besides, and I hope you can continue laughing, because fighting is no way to go in this universe. We have too many problems in the world than fighting over young or old, black or white, or whatever. Good night and good luck.
Good night. Thank you, Heiner. Appreciate you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, he's got some good words. Definitely, I don't agree with everything Heiner says, and not everybody does, especially with the camera on and verbal, that's a gift. And it's not necessary, depending on who says it is. If it is necessary, then it's necessary. But by default, coming on Zoom doesn't mean you put your camera on. We're not watching Sam Cook right now, for example. Right? And Kayla doesn't put her camera on a lot when she talks even. So Heiner's not 100% correct. Now, if we're in the middle of negotiations about war, and the deal is you come and put your camera on, so we know you're not AI, or at least hope you're not AI, that might be a useful rule. So, I think intentions speak louder. I don't think you need the video to see if somebody's lying to you or you don't understand. Ask them, right? And we should really respect what we're saying here. And that is usually why I'm arguing with Jaswinder or anybody else. And this is where Barry and I agree. He said it today, and when he said it, I was saying, yes, sir. We need to channel the conversations. If someone's going to come and present in a week, then we do that. But just coming in and having the same coffee shop conversation all the time is not why I'm here, but it may be why other people are here. So, and Heiner's here for his reason. If Doug came into the room, he'd change it with his reasons. So don't look at me like I'm the bad guy. I'm just saying I'm standing up for non-entertainment, low drama, get to the intention. And we can create the drama stories here for other people. I don't think we need to use the drama on each other here, but maybe I'm wrong. I would like to see us focus the channels. So if me and Glenn are talking about stuff that nobody wants to hear, and I'm interested in Glenn to hear him out compassionately and interested in it, then I'll make a separate channel, like the banter channel or something that Sam made. That's why I suggested it. And then you guys go there and complain that we're talking there. Well, then maybe we should just, go meet in private, and it's no longer a GCC conversation. So eventually people get pushed out unless we make spaces for them to be heard. And Stacy's bang on about that. How do we find the best elegant ways for people to be heard and not overheard, reheard, like Heiner's saying? And when can we signal to somebody that, you're not picking up on the room? Could you please be quiet now? And write down what you're talking about, because I would love to get back to it. I'm sure it's important to you, but right now it's not helping the room. And everybody can say, you know what, that host is wrong. Let's keep talking about it. That actually happens in this group. We have to be mindful. And that's my complaints. A lot of my arguments is either challenging somebody to say, who are telling me that I have to believe something, not whether the 2 ears and mouth from God. I'm actually challenging somebody's claim because the facts matter to me. But if the facts no longer matter, and we've gone into diplomatic zone where we just want to sign a treaty like Heiner's talking about, then yes, I have to re-engage my tactics. If I want to re-engage with Barry, then I have to make sure that I'm not looking for him to, or Doug for that matter, to play with my half-cooked ideas about conversation maps and journey maps. They just want the finished product. They want to help, they're interested in what they have to say that I might be able to use, but they're not interested in hearing or understanding what it is that I'm trying to say so that they can help me with what they got. And Barry did try. I'll give him that. It just wasn't a very adapted style to put me through that prerequisite pattern. I didn't think I had to go through that to have a conversation. And it ended up being, he took my request in my mind as I'm interested in his lecture and I would like to have the long version. And first he said, well, before I give you the long version, let's do a little bit of alignment here so it won't be a waste of my time. And I appreciate that too. But I wasn't looking for the long version and I wasn't looking for that kind of alignment. I was looking for more of a ping pong alignment. And the ping ponging was not happening. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. I'm
So-
going to interrupt and I'm going to just suggest that maybe we end this call because to
Good
be
idea.
honest,
Yes.
both of you have told me on separate occasions that you've stayed on longer than you'd like out of politeness. And I don't want either of you to feel that you have to be polite. So let's end the call. We good at
Yes.
your, okay.
I missed some of
Bye.
that, Stacy.
That's okay. We'll talk next time. I
Oh,
can't get it.
let's save the chat before we close it.
Oh, you have it?
See, where is the chat? Uh, there it is. Save the chat before we close it. Okay,
Let me know.
Bye-bye.
Okay, see you later. Have a good weekend.
yeah, you too.